Welcome, everyone. How's it going? It is indeed Wednesday. Hold on, folks. Let me do a quick switch over here.
Oh, hey.
Welcome, everyone. How's it going? It is indeed Wednesday. Hey, how's it going? How's it going, everybody?
Hey.
Quick switch over here. Oh my goodness. So first of all, hi, how are you?
Well, it's good. Sorry, I realize I'm listening to your stream and
shoot,
listening
yeah.
to. I was
Got an
like,
echo.
why am I double hearing you? Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Just I was dancing to the music that you had
Nice.
on, and I was folding socks.
That's funny. Fun fact, most of that intro music is the intro like beats and stuff like that is actually made by a friend.
Cool.
And the same goes for like the outro song. It's all made by a friend.
That's super cool.
Except for the last one. The last one actually wasn't supposed to happen. The automatic player just threw in a generic song that like it seems like a lot of people happen to like anyways, and it was a complete accident. By the way,
that's really funny. Well, I liked both the songs, so
sweet. Yeah, somebody mentioned in chat, Kansas did what was thought to be the impossible, voting down an amendment that would effectively.
I was shocked.
Yeah, but like at the same time, this is an argument that I've made that like when you put forth like policies in front of people that don't have a D or an R next to it, a lot of people will tend to lean to a more progressive platform. It's like if you give people the option to like raise minimum wage or give like felons the right to vote and things like that, expanding voting rates, like they'll vote for it. They'll vote for it if it's in ballot initiatives or constitutional amendments. Because Kansas made a 200D chess move and put the right to bodily autonomy effective in its constitution. So they were trying to take that away, and that's why people got out there and voted no. It turns out bodily autonomy is kind of important.
Just a little bit, especially when it's not just for your own state, but it's also for all the states around you too.
Exactly.
It's just like they were the last stronghold in that area that had access to abortion. I mean, goodness. Was that the place where like the 10-year-olds that was pregnant crossed into the border? Where was that?
I want to say Indiana. Indiana. I'm not sure exactly, but I want to say Indiana is the state they ended up going to. But you're correct. It does have a ripple effect for the states around them. So good on them. Good on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if we want to go into the whole parties with D's and R's and stuff, we could talk about the third party that Andrew Wing just started.
We had a small discussion about that.
Yeah.
Cringe.
I don't. Cringe. He hasn't said anything about climate change, has he?
No, I don't think so, and nor do I think that that's his interest, at all.
He pretended to be interested about that in the presidential election.
Yeah, I mean, he pretended to be interested in quite a few things, and then turned out not to be. Oof. I think his
weird that happened.
Yeah, his party was called, or his party third party plan is called Forward, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We actually saw a video of like an analysis by Kyle Kalinske yesterday, and I mean, the bottom line is the problem with Andrew Yang is that he seems to portray himself as some type of centrist, or at least some type of anomaly to the status quo, right? He wants to be different from the status quo, but the entire party has a bunch of people from the status quo, like at the head of that.
Isn't that always a problem?
Right. Like you're trying to make a third party and try to differentiate yourself, and your whole spiel is the fact that we're not Democrats or Republicans, forward, right? That's the whole idea. And all over his websites, like people are tired with the two-party system, blah, 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 blah. But then puts like people like in high up positions from like Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and Trump's like cabinet or assistants or whatever like involvement with those administrations, and it's like, well,
he's the example of a bad moderate. You know what I mean? Just like a moderate, the equivalent kind of person to saying that we should give equal arguments to the climate deniers and the climate supporters. You know?
Yeah, it never ends up being moderate, does it? When you think about it, like
it doesn't end up being moderate when we're just, I don't know, when we're acting like our playing field is not what it is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you're claiming to be a moderate, but somehow for some weird reason, a lot of your arguments and positions end up only helping one side. It's like I call it the Tim Pool effect, right? The you know, I'm gonna be a centrist and disaffected, whatever, liberal or whatnot, but all your content is just skewing to one side. You're never a moderate.
Exactly. I was listening to Manchin in a Fox News interview talking about the Inflation Reduction Act today, and because I just published today a video on the climate provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act. So I've been covering that for a bit. So he was basically talking about, he was focusing really heavily on, no, we're just Americans and stuff. He won't say, by the way, whether or not he wants Biden to run again or he wants Democrats to win in the midterms. He refuses to say either of those things, but he will continuously say how, don't worry, there's also oil and gas provisions in the infrastructure bill. Don't worry. We made it a what did he say? A balanced energy bill.
Yeah.
Because it has both. And I'm like,
I don't see why this would need to be balanced. Like, I heard that there's a lot of, for lack of a better word, a lot of like small W's when it comes to the Inflation Reduction Act or the, you know, whatever. It's basically, without calling it, it's the Build Back Better plan, but like even more watered down than it was originally planned. So that's what it sounds like to me. The Build Back Better plan in its original form was a good start. Then it got into a big fight with Manchin and Cinema and all that stuff, so it got watered down even more. Manchin said he would agree, but then lied about it or changed his mind. And he torpedoed the same act that he proposed, which is okay. And now we have the Defeat Inflation Act, or whatever it's called, the Inflation Reduction Act, which does have some small W provisions in it, but I mean, we're now getting to the point where it's just like almost watered down.
So here, I want to actually get you a little more excited about the act, because it's, in the way of the climate provisions, it actually includes quite a bit in there. It includes enough for us to drop emissions by at least 30% in the next 10 years, if not 40%. Now, that's still not the 50% that we need to even, you know, reach our Paris Climate Accord of keeping warming at or below 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. We're not going to hit that as a society. Like, let's be real. I'm shooting for 2. To be honest, I'm shooting for under 2 or like 1.8 or 2. That's my goal now, because 1.5, it's gone. It's gone. We blew past that shit a couple years back.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. But in the way of this inflation bill, regardless of the fact that it does have the agreement that if you put solar panels and wind on federal lands, you also have to issue leases for fossil fuels on those lands too, because we have to be balanced. Right. So it forces Biden to go back on his promise of not allowing any new leases on federal lands. That being said, he was already going back on that rule, so it's really not that surprising. And Manchin needs something to agree to. One of the cool things he actually did was he actually got funding for black lung disease for coal miners, which is a good thing to do because it's on the rise again, as coal is hitting at the record level this year. But besides that fossil fuel stuff that is in there, which studies like the Rotem Group, like Moody's, they
Mhm.
show that it really won't increase our current projections very much compared to what is being decreased. So
Okay.
it counterbalances to get to still at least 30% reduction. I think it's like 31, and at most like 44% reduction. That is still a big freaking deal. That
Yeah.
needs to be celebrated. That is by far the biggest climate legislation we have had in US history.
Yeesh.
It's
Now,
not fucking enough, but we do need to celebrate this because if it passes, it's a big win.
okay.
Now, cinema.
Yeah, we've got to talk about like the
What it takes to pass.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, what are the chances of this thing passing? Because like at this
I love
point,
you too, Cosmic Seekin.
because like at this point, I'm scratching for any W's that we can pick up.
Yeah. So take this W. This is a W if it passes. Now the main thing that we need to get it to pass is we need cinema on board, and the problem is that it closes tax loopholes, which is also another good thing that we should celebrate. Okay.
Well, yeah.
One benefit to Manchin, if I can give him one thing, is he's been wanting to close those tax loopholes for corporations that have not been paying for years. That's a really fucking good thing, and it's very important, and will bring more money into the government to do good programs. Okay. Now, cinema hates that.
Why?
That's one of the reasons they can't fucking agree, is because cinema and Manchin don't agree on everything. They both blockade, but on different things.
Yeah.
That's what's so fucking frustrating about both of them. Not to mention that also cinema ran on a Green Party bill, and now she's anything but.
Yeah, that's
but she's not necessarily completely against completely for fossil fuels either. She doesn't get money from fossil fuels like Manchin does, right?
Yeah.
She gets money from pharmaceuticals and that kind of thing. That's where her money goes. That's why she blocks things, but she doesn't necessarily block them from a fossil fuel perspective like Manchin does. And similarly, she does block things having to do with tax loopholes that Manchin supports. So that's going to be the biggest thing, is that if she's going to allow that to happen. I don't fucking know why she doesn't like it. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think maybe
I don't understand why she supports shit like that. But I think it goes to the same sort of perspective that like Fox News does, which is supporting corporations, even though they won't say that they're supporting corporations. They actually are, because they're always still thinking of the trickle-down effect, that if corporations get more money, they will give more money to the working class, and we now know that doesn't work. So that's the only thing I can think of that she still believes. But maybe I'm missing some sort of other ideological aspect.
If she's getting a bunch of money from pharmaceuticals and whatnot, there's a provision there that's supposed to lower drug prices.
There's also that.
Mm-hmm. So there's that.
So she might block it on the basis of how it gets its money. But the stupid thing is one of the benefits of that is that it doesn't go into the deficit. You know, it's not taxing the regular people or whatever. And those are two things that people also won't support getting money through. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, a lot of the revenue that's going to be generated for this act is going to be, from what I understand, is going to be majority taxes on like the wealthy and corporations.
Top 200.
Yeah. I don't get it. I mean, like, at this point in time, like, the argument that we just don't have the money for it is not good enough for me. Because we do so much. We spend hundreds of billions of dollars on things that we shouldn't. So like the idea that we can't tax corporations more when they're raking in record profits, I don't know. I don't think anybody's against that except the people who are working for them.
Or they're either working for them or are the wealthy people that could be taxed too. So no, it's and unfortunately a lot of those people are have seats in power.
Yeah.
And that's why nothing gets through. But so it would be awesome if it passed. It has to be done this week because they're going on recess starting on August 5th.
Right.
So we have that.
So that means they've got 2 days.
Yeah, they literally have 2 days. But the one benefit is that Manchin is very passionate about it. He's been doing a lot of interviews on it. He clearly supports it. He's fighting both sides about it to make it happen. So that's the one benefit, is that for once we have this guy moving on something. So maybe it will work.
Yeah, I think there's also provisions in that bill that would provide, I think, subsidies or tax credits or cuts for the electrification of things that otherwise would be run on fossil fuels. I think there was a provision for appliances, like I'm assuming things like stoves and whatnot that run on gas that change to electric heaters, electric cars, any like things like that would be eligible for tax either credits or rebates or whatever the nomenclature is on the bill.
I mean, I could pull up my notes for the video because it's all in the video that I did.
Cool.
Yeah, so definitely watch the video. I'm not going to do that because you guys have to watch my video, okay?
True,
I'm very
we do.
proud of it. It's 18 minutes long, so, you know, that's about as short as the Becky can do. I'm a very long form person. I always want to make sure everything's included. But, and this was happening up until the very last part of editing the video, is I would find things I'd be like, oh, I need to add that. Dang it, I need to add that. Moody said something, you know, like
well,
but yes, there's a lot of subsidies and tax provisions. So one of the biggest things is that for a long time, the clean energy like wind and solar only had access to the investment tax credits. They did not have access to the production tax credits, and so they will now have access to both tax credits. And that's the case also for like let's see, well, carbon capture, because of course he loves carbon capture, hydrogen, because of course he loves hydrogen, and I think battery making and stuff like that. They now have access to the investment tax credit, which they didn't have any access to any tax credits before. And battery storage now has access to the tax credits, even if they don't have solar. And originally it was like only ones with solar can have access to it or something like that. So there's a lot of things that like have been given way more access, which is better than just throwing money at them, honestly, because it will lead also to just more money flowing in general, more of a long-term solution instead of a short-term solution, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So that's good. There's unfortunately no tax credits for grid operation and increasing the transmission lines and stuff like that. And that's something we really fucking need, because we have a lot of plants and stuff that are ready to go already. But if you put them on there, they're going to overwhelm the grid. We have to create a smarter grid. So that's a big challenge. But they did give $2 billion towards upgrading the grid. So that's at least something too. They also did put some money in one of Biden's Defense Production Act moves to increase domestic battery production. So that's another good one. And some climate justice measures too. Nice. Yeah.
There was an infrastructure bill that passed maybe, I think, last year through budget.
Yeah, November 2021. I also did a video on that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, out of all that money, shouldn't we have like mobilized some of that to upgrade our grid? Because like, as we get as we, you know, put more stuff like renewables and things like that, as more of that comes online, we're going to need a grid to handle it. It seems a bit short-sighted that they didn't really decide to fix that or upgrade that. That's purposeful. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's purposeful. So originally Biden did want to add more provisions that required certain money to be used for certain things. And a lot of people on the other side of the aisle did not want to support them. You know, states' rights, don't tell the states what to do or whatever. So most of the money could only be provided in a suggestive manner. So that means that it can only be provided with a little comment on the side that is like, hey, you should use it for this money because of these reasons. And then states can choose whether or not to do that. So some states have, some states have not used it for the purposes intended, but there was money in there to, when you're upgrading the grid, to upgrade it to include more renewable energy. And I have seen projects that have specifically gone money from the infrastructure bill and are using the money of the infrastructure bill to do that. But we might not be seeing it as much because it had to be suggestive.
Gotcha.
Or there had to be some sort of provision that the state decided not to agree to, which I'm trying to remember. That was a thing recently where it's like, Oh, it was for cleaning up oil and gas wells because they're like a huge source of like methane emissions. And so an easy way, a very low hanging fruit to decrease methane emissions is to clog those leaks that all the infrastructure that's been leaking, because
Yeah.
that's vast majority, right? And so there was one state, and I can't remember which one. Maybe it'll come to me, maybe it won't. I covered it on my podcast like a little while ago, that had just created a law or whatever that made it so that they couldn't increase the amount of money that these companies had to pay for to as like a collateral or whatever for cleanup costs in the future. Because what happens is when they get access to the lease, they have to pay a certain amount or have a certain fund for cleanup costs after they're done using that land. And the cleanup costs are exorbitantly low. Like they don't help at all. And so it ends up being the responsibility of taxpayers to clean up their mess. And one of the provisions for using the money for cleaning up wells is that they had to increase how much that was. And one of the states put into bill that the department in charge of that can't do that for 10 years.
What?
Yeah. So basically that money's now non and void.
Yay.
Now they can't use it to clean up the wells because they didn't do that provision beforehand. I'm trying to remember what state that was. It was, let's see if I can find it. So it's shit like that. It's too complicated. It's not just you give them money, you tell them how to use it, and they use it. You know,
Right.
Unfortunately, that can be how it is, but only if you have all of Congress on your side.
Yeah, which is kind of hard nowadays.
Just a teensy bit.
Yeah. Well.
Hey, a difficult Beckisphere.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, it's ADB day today. That's funny.
Yes, ADB.
This is so frustrating. So even if we get this thing on board, will it be enough to buy us time? Because like at this point in time, like I think the biggest factor is time. Is time essentially.
Yeah. Well, one of the main problems is that it's still encouraging new fossil fuel production. Which can still, it's a chess game. It's a total chess game, you know? Like it could include more provisions for fossil fuels. But let's say, for example, the social costs of carbon, which the Supreme Court did rule in favor of Biden for keeping in, blocks how many lease sales actually can go through because none of the fossil fuel companies hit those requirements. Then maybe it won't be as bad. So it depends. It doesn't look good right now. Straight up, it doesn't look good right now. We're in a shit situation right now, and unfortunately, yeah, we have a lot of problems. So I don't know how the chess game is going to go, but I know we do still have a lot of tools in the toolbox to use in defense of climate action. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
You know, it's really hard to predict. We're definitely, again, not hitting 1.5. Absolutely not. Our goal is to get under 2 or at most hit 2 because 2 is where catastrophic climate change starts. So
yeah, I mean, like
and where the coral reefs die. Actually, I think that's 1.5.
Yeah, the whole point of setting a goal of 1.5 was to avoid kicking off the domino effects that, well, would happen if you keep going past that point. I think that's why they said that, and why they were so adamant about, you know, the whole 1.5 degrees is because if you pass that, you are risking, you know, toppling off the domino effects that will result in catastrophic events that will then have chain reactions, which will then have other chain reactions. I mean, I've said this, like, you know.
So, I mean, and what's interesting is as we're going through the research, vast majority of these targets were hitting faster than we thought we were because of different reasons. The most recent reason is that people were not accounting for oh, what's it called? It's basically the how much water evaporates before it hits the ground. And
Hmm.
climate change is making it so more water hits the ground, which is why we're getting more flooding.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why we're getting more flooding. And most models were not accounting for that. And so that's one of the reasons why we were underestimating how much climate change was going to make flooding worse. Yeah. Yeah. Kentucky feels it right now. Um,
Oof.
yeah. So that's unfortunately a bit of a surprise. And unfortunately, most things that we're finding when people look at the studies and they go, oh, like they basically, which I completely understand doing, is you kind of block it off a little bit. You're like, there's no way it can be that bad. You know, there's no way it can be that bad. But many times it's actually worse than we thought it was going to be. And it's just like, that's a problem. Not all the times. Occasionally we find there's something better. I can't think of any at the moment, but I know there's been some where we're just like, oh, it might not melt as fast as we thought because of this or that. Or,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, this might not be as fucked this quickly. There's some of those, but yeah. Another interesting thing that's like completely mind-boggling to me is the impact of aerosols and air pollution on the climate.
Yeah.
That is something that is fucking with my brain a little bit because it's the only thing that's holding us together right now. The main reason we're not even feeling as bad of effects as that we should be on certain things is because we have so much air pollution. Air pollution counteracts it. And so when we decrease fossil fuel use, we will also be decreasing air pollution. And so it's going to make it seem like our decreasing of fossil fuels is making things worse.
Huh.
Because the effects of climate change are going to be more noticed as the air pollution decreases. We're seeing that right now in hurricane impact. So it actually turns out that the frequency of hurricanes decrease due to climate change.
Huh.
The intensity increases.
Right.
And the amount that it lasts on land increases, but we're finding that hurricane frequency is actually decreasing due to climate change. However, we're not seeing that everywhere because we're actually finding that aerosols increase the amount of hurricane frequency in tandem with climate change. And so you're seeing parts of the world that have seen a decrease in aerosols that have also seen a decrease in hurricane frequency. And you're seeing other places where there's still a lot of aerosol, like China and parts of Asia, and you're still seeing an increase in hurricanes. So now you have these two factors here, and we don't quite understand either of them, and they're working in tandem and against each other at the same time. And the same thing causes them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that plays out. And we might be underestimating that a little bit. Also, we have less than a minute on this Zoom talk.
Oh, shoot. Really? Okay.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
Okay. No, what? Okay, hold on. We're going to try to fix this right now.
Sorry, I should have told you when I saw the 10 minutes. I thought you knew.
Okay. All right, I think I can fix this.
That's really interesting, Maple Leaf. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, some places are actually going to be improved for a little bit, like crop yield and stuff in certain areas and colder places.
Yeah, I mean, of course you can think that, oh, in certain situations, everything gets affected differently. But
did you pay for this?
I think that overall, did you forget to feed the Zoom quarters?
We fed the Zoom quarters. He fed the Zoom quarters.
I did. I hope.
He's now paying for my time. I'm not receiving the money, but he's paying.
That's right. There we go. All right. Whew. I saved that just in time. Okay.
Yeah.
That was quick.
Top of the
hour. I was thinking that, yeah, sure, some areas might have it better off. But at the end of the day, climate change comes for us all.
I admittedly, whenever I see articles about, oh, this area is actually improving, this species is doing better due to climate change, I don't cover it because I think for one thing, it's already very much a like a less common thing, you know, so it would already be disingenuous to make it seem like it's even, but also it's temporary, and all those studies always say it's temporary. And so I always just kind of am like, I'm not going to even cover it because it's temporary. I don't want to give people hope in that way, you know.
Yeah,
there's many other ways to get hope, but that's not one of them.
Yeah, because you'll cover a story about like, oh great, we're having like recovery, you know, there's this area, there's this ecologically important area that's recovering, and you want to cover it, and you know, that's a
Parts
good thing.
of polar bears are actually doing better right now. And it's like, okay.
They're doing better right now. That's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
Like, oh,
like
yes.
There was a monarch butterfly rebound this summer. They've just been added now to the endangered species list. So
yeah, they're not doing too well.
That's a great example. Literally 6 months difference between that happy article and the sad article. I'm like, I'm not covering the happy article, and yes, unless that happiness will be sustained, it won't be sustained for very long.
Right. Like there was an article saying that some of the coral reefs are doing better, but then a marine heat wave like just wiped everything out. So
that's during a La Nina, which is supposed to be cooler than average.
Yeah, and here we are. So of course, you know, there are areas that might show improvement, but like even if like you have that in a more long-term scenario, that only tells me that that's where like all the risk or all the conflicts are going to go, right? Because like as areas get more and more uninhabitable, there's going to be less and less habitable space. People are going to be forced to be in more and more concentrated areas. People are going to not have the same access to water. We're not going to be able to grow food the same way. And it turns out, and this is true, we need food and water. So I think that that's going to lead to paths to conflict. And like, yeah, some areas might be better, but it just means that there's less, you know, areas to begin with. And concentrated groups of people, it's just like a recipe for disaster, I think.
Yeah, boy, migration is another one where it's just like people are so underestimating that. I was watching yesterday a conversation between, oh my goodness, what was it? I literally shared it everywhere. I was like, oh, this is such a good conversation. It was between David Wallace Wells, who's a climate communicator, a well-known climate communicator, has written many books, and I think he works for the New York Magazine. I think he said in the interview that he's in charge of the climate beat and the COVID beat. I'm like, why the hell would you do that to yourself?
Oh, man.
Imagine, like, geez, are you going to cover monkeypox now too?
Oh, no. That's
inflation.
Jeez.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. I need to plug in my laptop. The other guy. See, this is funny. I should know the other guy. Is it Jon Stewart? The other guy's more famous. I should know who that is, but of course I know the climate person.
Well, Jon Stewart is the comedian.
Yes. Is he the one with grayer hair who's particularly upset about the toxic chemicals for army people? Does this ring any bells to you at all?
Yeah. He was he was out there on the Capitol.
Is that Jon Stewart?
Yeah, with the veterans saying like the whole burn pits bill.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah.
It's him. I don't know if he's more on the left or whatever, but he's having some really interesting conversations, really talking with a lot of people and stuff, and he's very, very knowledgeable about the climate crisis. I'm impressed. I was very impressed. I think he probably is the comedian that knows the most about it.
Yeah, he was a Daily Show. He was the original, I want to say, Daily Show host. Back in Comedy Central. Yeah, I used to watch him a lot in Comedy Central. When I had cable.
He's fabulous. I don't watch him all that much because he wasn't on my radar as much. I watch more like Seth Meyers, John Oliver, but I really enjoyed that conversation with him, and I'm trying to remember the reason why I brought it up.
Well,
where was I going with that?
Well, it's all good. Is it on Jon Stewart's webpage on his YouTube channel?
It's his podcast, The Problem with Jon Stewart.
Okay.
Yeah. But what was it? It was okay. We were talking about migration. right? Okay, yeah. So the David Wallace guy, everything he described, everything that he was thinking about was literally the exact same thought process that I'm in right now, which was really validating. And I think a lot of people that are very knowledgeable about climate change stuff are pretty similar. Like, we all have our own theories on where this is going to end. We all have our own theories on what the warming is going to be, what the best solutions are, blah 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 blah, right? But we were pretty spot on with each other on what we were thinking about how good humans are versus not, how fucked up we're going to be, what the result's going to be. Where both of us, I think, are not extremely pessimistic. John was actually way more pessimistic.
Yeah.
But we're also not like stupidly optimistic either, right? And one of the things we talked about was migration, which was that there's a concern that there's going to be more countries that are just going to keep their borders closed. And it's going to be one of those situations where people are going to get more imperialistic, almost, in a way of just like keeping themselves closed and keeping all the conditions to themselves, which is definitely a realistic scenario of what could end up happening. And then everybody else is just in the outskirts are just fucked.
Right.
I hope that it won't get to that level of bad, but I do worry about that with a lot of countries' migration policies. I'm very concerned about that because it seems like we're getting more and more strict on our migration policies, which is the opposite of what we would need to do.
Yeah, we describe like this as a form of I guess some kind of proto eco-fascism, where the right finally starts to acknowledge that climate change is real and it's here. But their solution is to be like, well, it is. We got all the stuff, so everybody else,
Yeah.
So like that's exclusionary nationalistic thinking, which is, I mean, like it's just like a euphemism, or we use the euphemism like an eco-fascistic kind of tendency that we are seeing because the right is coming to the conclusion like, okay, well, maybe this is real. And so what if it is? We'll just like, just wall us off.
They want to be the celebrities that shoot off in the rocket. That's what they want to be. They want to be like, okay, we as America will be those people that just like take care of ourselves and that's it.
Yeah.
But then they also choose which Americans to take care of. I wanted to read Maple Leaf Dragon's response about the atmosphere aerosol thing. Mostly it's been the decrease of industry, which has reduced particulates in the air, which was retaining a lot more energy in the atmosphere, which contributed to more violent weather. You're right about the temporary thing, though. Yeah. And I want to also clarify that the aerosol thing is a temporary thing. So it's going to make an initial impact. And then once the aerosol pollution stuff is down, it will become less of a factor in general. And then she also said, I assume Maple Leaf was a female. I don't know. Maple's a girl's name.
Maple's is part of the Dragon Squad. Anybody who has a dragon after their name, they are part of the Dragon Squad from TYT. So if you ever see anybody with like a dragon after their name, I think Echo Resto Dragon, Maple Leaf Dragon. There's a couple of them. Omega.
They're part of the TYT, as in Young Turks.
Yeah, like the Young Turks Dragon Squad, which is a little gimmick that they made from, I think it was Iadora. They kind of made that up as a little like gimmick they have on the TYT server and community. So if you ever see anybody with that, that's part of the Dragon Squad.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing.
Yep.
Is this white male Kenny?
Oh, the maple leaf. Okay, wait, hold on. Now it makes sense.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's the maple leaf.
That's so funny. Oh, man. Well, nice to meet you, Maple Leaf.
Yeah, that's right. But instead, a state would wield environmentalism as a tool to bolster their authoritarianism. Right, that's exactly kind of what we were describing.
Yeah. And that ends up, there's another dragon. That also, is kind of like the whole geoengineering concept and stuff, which also David had a really interesting perspective on, because he said that originally when we thought that we were so fucked, we were headed towards 5 degrees Celsius, because we were not that long ago. So when we talk about progress, like, and that's when, especially like people that wanted the quick fix for themselves kind of thing. We're thinking a lot of geoengineering things. Not saying that everybody that thinks geoengineering is necessary thinks that, to be fair, but the people that were basically using that as the only thing to do, you know, that we were more drastic because we thought we would have to be more drastic. Now we're seeing that we're currently at, I think, 3.2, which is awful.
Yeesh.
Actually, I think we might be at 2.7. We might be at 2.7 now. We were at 3.2. I think we moved down to 2.7. And so suddenly the whole concept of geoengineering, people aren't talking about it as much because it's just not, we're not as extreme as we were before.
Yeah. And
so I think that might,
works.
maybe that could also happen if we continue to move the needle down and people start being more and more realistic about, oh, okay, we don't need to be like just we need to be moonshot, to be fair. But we don't need to be moonshot with one-shot solution kind of things, right?
It's not like, that's not how that works. Yeah,
exactly. So now we need to think more about the reasonable things that are more likely to keep us alive after we try this.
Yes, geoengineering is a no-no in my opinion. That's like,
yeah, I think we've already fucked with the environment enough. I really don't think we need to try to unfuck it by fucking it more. Like that just doesn't. The logic there isn't quite there for me. The only one that I'm like kind of okay about a little bit is cloud seeding. We've already tried it. Countries have already done it. It seems like more of a mild thing. Okay.
Yeah. Do you think that it's a possibility that people will take this, I guess, to make this into parallel with like COVID, right? So COVID, when it first hit, people were freaking out, right? Then measures were put in place. People got a hand of it. Like more and more data came out. People kind of started to understand it and adjusted. And now, like, you get the other side of the coin, which is people going like, see, it wasn't that bad. So we need to like just stop going. You know, like we need to just like we're done, right? We're done. It's over. Pandemic is over, folks. It's done. We did it. And like, see, it wasn't that bad. They were all freaking out for no reason. But the reality is.
Yeah, I think that's something that, you know, as climate change continues to get worse, it won't allow us to get to the, it already happened. Like, maybe people are going to say that 300 years down the road. I don't, I don't think it's because, you know, like COVID's still going, obviously, but us in the US, even with the deniers running around, our death rates are like, you know, they've dropped, right? So people think it's over. It's, to be fair, like a lot of us stopped wearing masks, right? Like, okay, you know, so and now it's like one of those things where it's like, it sucked. Like I felt like shit kind of thing. I've heard, I'm sorry, I haven't had it. You've had it.
Yeah.
It felt like shit.
It was not fun.
It was not fun.
0
but you got
10.
through it on the other end. You know, and your brain's not going to fully remember how awful it was, right? It'll slowly fade in time of how bad it is, but we're only in the beginning of the climate thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to happen that way.
No, because like, yeah, like in that sense, they're like different. They're in different like playing fields, but like I'm saying like the mentality, like as we progress with like technology and stuff like that, or we make certain adjustments and like things start to perhaps stabilize if we do them in time, people start like saying, oh well, you know, I guess we did the thing, and then like
I mean, my one hope is those people won't also be like, okay, let's go back to fossil fuels now,
right?
You know, like at least if they're stupid about it like that, they're not going to revert back, you know. So that's the one thing, is that I think people, which they're already realizing more and more as we're moving from climate denialers to climate delayers to just like still fossil fuel sims for no fucking reason because the economics don't even support your argument anymore. Yeah. Like, you know, as more people are moving towards this just makes sense, then they're probably not going to revert back, at least, which is all I care about, you know? Yeah. Will our history be greenwashed in the end? Probably.
Maybe.
You know, we'll be dead by that point, probably, but it could happen.
And I see. So the whole Dragon Squad thing was John Iadarola from the Damage Report was making fun of the Proud Boys, and it stuck. Oh. So that's how that happened. Okay.
I love that.
That's funny.
That's very funny.
Yeah, I don't
Believe it or
know.
not, if we can open up the more nickel and lithium mines, we can drastically accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels. If we can transition back to regenerative agriculture, those two things would put a serious dent in the temperature rise overall. It's true. It's true. The nickel and lithium mines are completely necessary, unfortunately, but we do still need to validate, or we should validate the reasons why nickel and lithium mines so far, the ones that have not been allowed to be open, why they haven't been allowed to be open, because in a lot of cases it's ended up being that they are on indigenous land, or things are not done properly. I think that you can definitely open more nickel and lithium mines properly, but a lot of people are going through it in an environmentally unjust method, because that it can often be the cheaper way to do it, and luckily it's not as easy as it used to be to do that.
Yeah.
And so hopefully with the Defense Production Act and how the federal government chooses to go through it, because they said they were going to do it in an environmentally just way and blah 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 blah, if they actually follow through with that, which I to some extent believe that they at least are going to do it, try,
Yeah.
then that will be a great benefit for us to have more access to that, especially because China's controlling all of the production of clean energy right now, which is not a good thing.
The what is it? The photovoltaic materials, the things that make solar panels. I think China has a massive hold on that market. I think
Entirely.
they're the biggest producer, I want to say.
So they're the biggest miner and a lot of stuff, and biggest producer in all the parts right now. And they, I think, like right now control like 80% of the market, and it's expected to be up to like 95% of the market in like the next 5 years.
Yeah,
if nothing changes.
But either we got to figure out how to make this here, or we gotta buy it from them. So it's one of
those are the options, exactly.
Yeah,
and I mean, it's not the same thing as being reliant on Russia and Saudi Arabia for oil. It's not the same thing, because when you have solar panels, like it's the same thing for how it could hinder the climate transition. But once you hit the energy transition, a lot of places, solar panels can last for a little while. It's not that they are needed in a consistent flow like is the case for fossil fuels. It's not like they're going to last 30 years, but it's still less dependent than I'm just, for people that want to compare the two. They're not exactly the same thing. But that being said, I don't like monopolies for anything.
Yeah.
So like we shouldn't. And unfortunately, China's just really good at that.
Yeah. So
they're really fucking good at that for everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then obviously we should probably increase our abilities to produce things here. And I think that, which brings me to my next question. What is it, I guess, what is it going to take to push or to nudge or to encourage the declaration of a climate like a declaration of a national emergency, so that we can have more funds being directed to try to solve this problem? Because there was a moment where that Joe Biden gave the impression that he was possibly maybe perhaps, and then it didn't happen. Yeah, like
I mean, to be fair, he said that, and then the Manchin thing happened. Like the Inflation Reduction Act happened. So I think that's part of it. I think that might be one of the reasons why they're not focusing on it quite as much, because he did think he had no options except for that, which it sucks that it took him that long to move on executive or actions, just because there were other options. He should be doing those things in tandem instead of just like one or the other. But I think that's one of the reasons why it's slowed down. Also, I think as soon as he does that, he's going to get sued. He's going to be sued by fossil fuel companies in Republican states so fast.
Bring it on.
It's the same kind of thing that happened with Obama too, when he originally was trying to make the clean power plan or whatever it was. Was it? No, it wasn't the clean power plan. It was that was the Trump one. That was
Yeah, it's something that started in 2011.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called.
It's in my last video.
But it's
Not
the
the most.
whole.
It's the it's maybe it's.
It's the thing that kicked off the whole Supreme Court thing, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that thing, right? It didn't even get a chance to be put into action because and that was an executive order. As soon as that happened, he got sued by 18 attorney generals. 18 attorney generals. And it went nowhere. That's one of the craziest things about this latest Supreme Court ruling with the West Virginia v. EPA is that they're judging an act that's not in effect now, nor was it even ever enacted. That is what they based that Supreme Court ruling on.
Yeah, on
a ghost
magic.
of a ghost.
Right, on magic.
Exactly.
And, yeah, you were right. It was the Clean Air Act.
Oh, it was. I said Clean Power Plan before, but it was in the Clean Air Act, but it wasn't the Clean Air Act. It was the actually maybe it was the Clean Power Plan. Then I can't remember the one that Trump did because he did one. Yeah, no, I was right originally. It is called a Clean Power Plan. That was the one Obama did, and then the one that Trump did was like the Clean Energy Equal Clean Energy Act or something like that. That ended up being honestly not helpful at all. But it didn't matter because also the Clean Power Plan would have only been effective for like maybe 4 or 5 years because the economy ended up doing exactly what it asked in the first place before it was even able to take effect. So that's an example of, well, would it have been better to do it just economically or federally? I think honestly it wouldn't have happened as much if the economy wasn't so scared by the federal action, but that's just my opinion on it. And also I think cloud seeding should only be done federally and should not be done state by state because they will definitely try to hurt each other somehow that way. And country to country, there definitely needs to be a international court like crime against environment. That's something that has been needed for a long time. There's nothing that penalizes a country for decimating another country's environment, which is just bonkers. And so if geoengineering became more of a concept, that is absolutely something that even more so needs to be something, you know, so that countries can't just like see the shit out of each other or something.
I mean, we have like the international court and stuff like that, but that's kind of like the UN and all that, but that's kind of a joke, like in the sense that like there's no like teeth behind it, because like if the United States decides to be like, I don't want to play, I don't want to play ball, like
that's true, but it's a little harder for them to say, I don't want to play ball, when there's actually at least like something there that people could point to and be like, hey, you know, that's a reason why you should act. There's nothing for the environment. Like I can't remember how many crimes against things there are. There's like 6 or something, and none of them are for environmental impact, which is stupid. Like imagine if it was, then fossil fuel companies could definitely be sued for having their, you know, the land and water of another country be decimated, which happens all the time in Africa, and they don't have anything they can do about it because it's like, well, there's no international law to protect people when it comes to having oil and gas spilled in your area. So
yeah, the only thing we can do is like clean it up, kind of, and that's like that's a whole thing. Usually that's handled by like response teams that the company has to hire, which is dependent on, I guess, like the law that's in that specific area, I assume. The maritime law.
Yeah, the maritime law.
That's in that area. But there is no like international like enforceable agreements that do things like what you're saying. At all. Yeah. And so, you know, if people end up going more the geoengineering route, that's just another reason why we need to do that, though that needs to be a concept already. Yeah, there should be, or at the very least, there should be pushes to have pacts between like multiple countries that can work together and say like, okay, this area, like we're going to protect this area because all of us are bordering X, Y, and Z and like all this sea.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, for example, the Amazon, let's say, you know, There should be some sort of treaty that allows the Amazon to just exist on its own, because it's so freaking important. But if you do that, you take out the economic benefits for so many countries around it. So then, okay, so the border goes through the Amazon, but there still should be some sort of, maybe, I always think of things like ecotourism, but done right, like things that make it actually financially make sense for countries to preserve their environment, because it's a global right, it's a global responsibility.
Yeah.
It's almost like a national park, but it's a international park.
Yeah.
That's what we need like international parks or something like that, something that it actually, there are true consequences, like maybe the whole UN comes after you if you hurt the Amazon. I don't know, like needs to be a serious response though if something happens.
Yeah.
I don't know what the solution is for that, but I just think about that a lot, because also I think if people value the environment like they value the economy, if they put some sort of economic value to nature and to the environment in a way that is more sustainable than current ecotourism methods, because they often decimate the environment to be close to the environment,
Right. That's so frustrating.
If it's done, it's so frustrating. But if it's done responsibly, then imagine how many more pretty places there'd be.
Yeah, that's true.
Honestly.
And like, I know that like it's obviously a good way to get people to understand is by like showing them the economic side. It's just like frustrating that that's like the thing. That's the thing that people like have to worry about. It's like, well, guess how
capitalism.
like, yeah, like guess what the economy runs on? Resources. And how do those resources get produced? Yeah. So
nothing with your like fake concept of currency. We're talking about real tangible things that will make you be alive or be not alive.
Right.
What I mean? Like these, like screw the stock market. That's
yeah, there will be nothing there will be no stock market, nothing, or it would be irrelevant if we can't figure this out in time, essentially.
Yeah, like, exactly. Which is why, a lot of people are like trying to go full anarchy on shit, which I completely understand and respect. There's actually really not that much compared to like what Fox News would tell you in the way of like crazy anarchy running around going, climate change, climate chaos. You know? It's interesting because I'm seeing more and more opinion pieces that are like, the time for peaceful protest is over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this should be interesting.
Yeah.
Because they're already getting arrested like a shit ton because no one gives a shit about climate activists and they're just being made fun of all the time. So imagine them going more rioty. I don't know how it would go. But then again, that's how a lot of movements actually made an impact. So
yeah, exactly. And like at the same time, like there is a lot of anxiety, especially for like the people, like the younger generations and the people who kind of like see and understand what's happening. There's a sense of anxiety that they're kind of reading through all of this and kind of seeing the bigger picture and be like, damn, if we don't do something, we're screwed.
Yeah.
So
right,
like, and that feeling gets more and more as time goes on and as nothing gets done, or at the very least not enough, or what is perceived to be as not enough. Combine that with like every freaking week there's a new record that's breaking. Every freaking week there's like a new like catastrophic weather event that happens, and it's like, okay, well, no one's listening.
Yeah, and they're always like, oh, now's not the time to talk about it. It's like, well, when exactly are we supposed to be talking about it? The answer really is they never want us to talk about it, but
right.
Yeah, there was I had an idea for a mural that I thought would be cool, that just shows like the carbon emissions of different countries the same way that you see the difference in planet sizes.
Yeah.
Just to show the drastic amount of historical emissions. It's the US's fault. Like it's completely our fault. Like the amount of emissions that the United States has caused in this problem, the amount of CO2 they have put into this system, we have put into this system, is catastrophic. It is ridiculous. We are one country and we represent 22% of historical emissions. The whole of Africa represents less than 1%.
Yep.
I want to see that in a mural.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know, put a little Africa right here,
that's
the
right.
whole of Africa, and then put the United States big sun right here.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I have a lot of ideas, but I don't have necessarily any of the actual like talent needed to do them or figure out how to put a mural up somewhere or be a little gremlin and go like Banksy style. I
That's
don't
right.
have the balls to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Like the idea that that some people have that is just like not as big of a deal because they don't see it um is really what's I think frustrating about this whole thing. And
Mhm.
I definitely see people thinking that like, listen, nobody's listening to us, so we're gonna make them. You
A
know?
scientist just handcuffed himself to I think it was a bank like today.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I can only imagine like the people who are actually handling the data and the people who actually see the writing on the wall and see
Yeah.
this day in and day out and saying like, damn,
It's terrifying. It's
that's not looking
absolutely
good.
terrifying. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole faction of the Extinction Rebellion that is scientists.
Yeah.
They are all scientists. It's a video I've been wanting to do, honestly, to just because a lot of people just get the impression, the very, very wrong impression, particularly like conspiracy theorists and stuff who don't believe in any of the science stuff and they think that people are just government manufactured things, right? Like the tiny amount of power that science has on world governments is astonishing. It is astonishing how they will spend billions and trillions of dollars on research for the sake of it, but they won't listen to the research once it's done from their own scientists. And scientists are getting so desperate, they are crying on TV, like, don't look up, and being laughed at.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, they are gluing and handcuffing themselves to buildings.
Yes, and self-immolating.
Scientists, people with PhDs who have been studying their lives on this stuff.
Yep.
And they are that desperate.
Yeah, because they see the writing.
Terrifying.
They see the writing on the wall more than me.
Yeah, like, more than any of us could. And they are being laughed at.
Yeah, that's pretty. We're living on a different reality when you've got
straight up apocalyptic. Like, what the fuck?
Yep.
I get it. Americans have wanted to create their own history forever. Particularly, we are very good at making shit up and pretending like shit happened in a certain way when it didn't.
Right.
Very talented about that, about choosing our heroes.
But this is
beyond that. And we're obviously seeing it for other things too, like COVID and stuff like that. We're seeing it for all kinds of things. And I think one of the reasons, though there's many, it's just like this de-evolution of trust in education and trust in just teachers as well. Like, it starts young.
Yeah, which is
first you don't trust your teachers, and then you don't trust any other professionals. Like, it starts young.
Yeah, like, it's just wild to me, like the concept that like that it's seen as rebellious, or it's seen as punk to be the dissenting voice when you have a topic where a consensus of science is like pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying that like science is absolute, but when you start seeing a trend in data that says, listen, we've been doing this for decades and decades and decades, and the majority of us in this field have reached the same conclusions all over the world, that hey, climate change is A, real, and B, caused by us. So like, kind of like, let's do something about it. And then you have like the one
people
person.
Don't remember what the scientific theory is. People don't remember what scientific experimentation, what it takes. They don't remember what peer review is.
Right.
You know, they don't remember what independent peer review journals are. Like, the whole purpose of science, how science operates, it's lost on people nowadays. And it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, I was very fortunate to grow up with two very smart, like, sciencey parents. Like, you know, both my parents are computer engineers kind of people, and they're always super curious, and they have really drilled in critical thinking to me. And it's amazing to me, the loss of critical thinking in this country.
Yeah, because like
it's terrifying.
You'll have like an entire consensus of saying that, you know, going back to the climate change thing that says like climate change is real and that it's caused by us. And then like
Mm-hmm.
some dude who may have had a tangential relation to the field says actually no, it's not true. And then like everybody will think like, and then you'll have people being like, see,
And they're from
like
some like fossil fuel funded think tank that's not peer reviewed at all, and he
yeah,
actually has a degree in um I don't know, bio, or what was the one that was like, oh, the population boom was done by a guy who studies insects,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
equated his insect theory to humans.
Right. Yeah, we were actually going over that the other day, where some person decided that they were gonna provide sources to me, and like the sources ended up being like some guy who is like who worked with the IPCC in 2001, had nothing to do with like climate science. I think he
Mm-hmm.
had something to do with like atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
um, atmosphere something, and then it turns out that he was getting hundreds of thousands of dollars by the fossil fuel industry to
And there it
say that,
always goes. Mm-hmm.
yeah, to say that
Yeah.
it's not actually carbon dioxide that's the issue.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like actually James, who's here, can probably remind me exactly of who we were talking about,
I
and
need
then
to
like
read some of these comments. I've been
yeah,
missing comments.
if you want like resources and stuff like that, like you can always ask James Napper.
He goes into my Twitch stream now too.
Yeah, like you can always ask him for like any type of like references or anything like that. Like I think he's poli sci, so he's always like investigating stuff. And man, I forgot what the guy's name was, but James came back and said like, oh, this dude, was saying that like climate change is real and it would be silly to think so, but like because he's getting paid by like the
Yeah.
fossil fuel industry, like
I've been accused of being paid
nice. By who?
on my hydrogen video.
Oh no.
Because it was early on in my YouTube career, and granted, like I don't think it was that bad. I rewatched it. I think the worst part about it is I didn't have a teleprompt by that point, and so I was a very slow talker. But I don't think I had any necessarily incorrect things. I just had some things that honestly I didn't know about until recently, that I don't think were really talked about until recently. Like, for example, how hydrogen is an indirect greenhouse gas. That was not a concept 9 months ago. So, they were saying, they were accusing me of not doing the like, I don't know, not viewing hydrogen right, like viewing it too kindly or something like that, which I also didn't do. They just wanted me to be paid for some reason.
Well, it depends.
I want me to be paid too, to be fair.
Oh man, it just depends, because like yeah, if you use hydrogen in a certain way, it's bad. But if you use hydrogen, I forget, there's like three, right? There's three different kinds, blue, green, gray, or something like that. I have a feeling that there's three, and I can't remember. I can't put my finger on the third one. Different kinds of flowers. No, hydrogen.
Oh yeah, there's black, gray, blue, pink, and green.
Gotcha.
Yeah, pink is nuclear, which now there's the new nuclear and nuclear hydrogen alliance or whatever. Which sounds interesting, honestly, because nuclear produces a lot of energy and it's very energy intensive to make hydrogen.
Yeah.
So that actually sounds like a possibly good match. But yeah, green hydrogen is great and all. But it's very energy intensive to make. It takes a lot of wind and solar to make that. Like a lot. And so it's hard to see it as completely effective, but at the same time, it's really important for hard to decarbonize sectors that are also super energy intense. Like it's funny, it's an energy intense thing to make an energy intense thing.
Yeah.
Like it sucks that that's our option, but I mean, it's that or biofuels.
Yeah.
Or completely relying on carbon capture. Or redesigning the technology and redesigning our systems. That's also a possibility.
Yeah.
That people don't talk about.
Like, doing carbon capture should be kind of like I think at this point it's going to end up being necessary.
It is necessary according to the IPCC
Yeah.
and the International Energy Agency, which is completely fair. But it's not meant to be used for fossil fuels.
Right, exactly. It's not the excuse to say that we can just keep going because we have this cool technology. No, that's not how this works. The whole point is to be carbon negative at this point.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's negative. It's not neutral. It's not net zero.
Yeah.
So people use net zero and neutral synonymously, and they're not the same thing. Net zero implies that you are taking something out to make up for something you did emit. Neutral is that there's no emissions.
Right.
And most companies and countries go towards the net zero side, and they are using carbon offsets and the hope of carbon capture as their plan. And that's not a good idea at all.
Yeah.
You want them to be neutral or negative. I think there's one country now that has planned to be carbon negative, which is cool. I think it's like Sweden or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And I hope more countries do that. I think we're not going to see that, though, be a concept until at least... I mean, the trajectory of things are moving a lot faster than I expected on certain things. So maybe it'll be faster, but I'm saying 10 years. I think 2030, we're going to start hearing more about the neutral or negative concept.
Yeah.
People are already jumping and bouncing around about it now in the way of terms, but I don't think that we're going to actually see countries or companies go for the neutral or negative legitimately for 10 years.
Yeah, a lot of companies say that they're doing some cool stuff and like they're doing this and they're that, but it's all ends up being like a PR stunt. Essentially, the same thing goes for net zero by net zero by 2050 or whatnot. It ends up just being like a term that they greenwashed to make themselves look good. And when you look at it, it's like
that was another thing that I totally agreed on at the interview with Jon Stewart and David Wells. I always think of David Wallace from The Office, by the way. One of the things he said was this was just like a throwaway comment. He's like, well, and countries are starting to move on net zero plans, and corporations are saying they're moving on net zero plans. I haven't seen it yet. He just like casually just threw that out there and just kept talking. I was like, that's what I've been noticing too. Interesting.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that because they only hear the pledges and stuff. They don't really look at the follow through, and I'm seeing more follow through from countries than I am from corporations. Well, of course, there's exceptions to the rule. To be fair, there's more corporations than there are countries. So that
yeah, and there's also not really too much of an incentive to actually do it, but if you can pretend and you actually don't have to do anything, it looks good. And if it looks good,
and it's not going to be your fault because by the time you're CEO, the past CEO's retired, and that was on the past CEO that they didn't move. But you're the new CEO, and it's a new company now,
right? And
then they can just keep doing that over and over and over again, and no one ever takes responsibility for it. And next thing you know it, here we are.
Yep, it's the same. What is it? Out with the old boss is the same as the new one. So
yeah.
If we keep going, nothing changes, and
clones named Dave.
That's
They're
right.
all the same.
I found the interview that you're talking about.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I'm gonna post it again in chat. It's a 46-minute-ish interview.
I watched High last night. It was a wild ride. I recommend most of these things to watch High, but you have to be like the non-anxious High. It has to be like the philosophical High.
Yeah.
Where your brain can expand and like open to things. They're not saying anything super crazy or anything, to be fair. That's not necessarily the main example of a video that you watch to have your mind open or whatever, but you need to be in a good mindset because it's not necessarily the most positive video.
Yeah. Usually this topic always ends up going pretty black pill pretty quick. Because like you start off like thinking about environmentalism and thinking about nature and doing what you can to protect nature, because that's probably a good thing. Whatever you put into nature is what you get out of it. And you start to realize like the realities of the situation. You go from like wanting to protect nature and things like that to realizing like, wait, things are
a bit of a shit show. Oh hey,
yeah,
isn't It's so true though. When I first started learning, about in science and stuff, like there's the happy side of science. There's the fun, exciting, discovery, cool, weird animal side of science. And then there's the, oh, we're fucked side of science. There's the, oh, everything's going to hell and we're doing absolutely everything wrong side of science. And I avoided that side for the longest time. But it's really hard to keep that separate. And that's the same thing for nature lovers too. Like that's the one benefit is that because it impacts everyone and everything, like it's getting harder and harder not to build that bridge.
Yeah, I mean, you at this point, it's like it's pretty hard to ignore.
Yeah, people are talented. Don't get me wrong. Humans are talented.
Yeah, like you'll have people who outright deny like what they're seeing. But I think for like I hope that it's getting to the point where it's just you can't ignore it, right? I mean, you've got like California's on freaking fire. So is like half the world. I think like at this point, like Europe, Asia, the West Coast are all like under perpetual like heat domes. So like every week is like, yep, we're gonna be in triple digit temperatures today. Oh,
meanwhile, there's other places that have hail and are flooding.
Yeah, yep.
Torrential rainstorms.
Yeah, China.
Glaciers overflowing areas. Yeah.
Yeah, China had a massive flood. Kansas,
now.
Or wasn't Kansas? Was it? No, Kentucky, right?
That had Kentucky. Yeah. Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like something recently happened in Kansas too. I don't know. I'm hitting all the states, honestly. Every state has something going on.
Yeah, I mean, you could realistically just name a state and just be right that there was some kind of catastrophic weather event.
There was flooding in Virginia that I missed. I was like, oh, okay. There were wildfires in northern Texas that I missed. I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. you know, like I was like, I can't catch them all now. Like it's and the funny thing is that, I started talking about climate news 2.5 years ago now. And that's a long time. Two, because it was in October 2020. So almost 2. And I, so it's hard for me to say, it's different if it's a reporter that's been doing it for 20 years. They definitely have a indication on the acceleration rate. I sometimes have to catch myself because I'm like, did it really accelerate that fast, or am I just more aware? It's hard to know. I think that also catches some people off guard too. They may underrate how bad things quickly got because they're like, oh, well, I mean, I wasn't that aware before, so maybe this is more normal than I think it is. I don't think it is.
No, not at all. It's the boiling frog kind of thing, right? The boiling frog analogy.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's going to continue happening, though. Yeah, the heat's turning up faster.
Yep.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should do something about it.
Perhaps we should.
Like that's the thing. It gets to the point where like most of the stories and most of the I guess like mindset comes from like different people I've talked to, and I have a friend who I grew up with. Essentially, like our families have known each other for decades. We've known each other since like day one type stuff. And his little brother is at this point a researcher in South Florida.
Wow.
And he does like restoration. He's like doing restoration efforts for the Everglades and things like that. But he's been on a couple of trips to like the Arctic and things like that to gather ice samples and things like that. And it was rough.
Yeah,
it was rough because like you see the information like firsthand. You're gathering this information. I mean, like even with gathering samples and information from the Everglades, you start to realize like, oh man, if this goes, like if this goes,
yeah, like there's so much carbon stuck in there. There's so much methane and nitrous oxide stuck in there. There was a recent study. I don't know if you probably heard this podcast episode. It's funny, a lot of my references are in the podcast episodes. I'm like, wait, he's definitely already heard this. But like the wetland thing that you can re-wet wetlands. That's really hard to say. Re-wet wetlands.
Yeah.
There we go. So there's at least that. But yeah, no, it's bad. It's really bad. And scientists are seeing it firsthand, and then they're getting mocked.
Right. And it kind of like gets it kind of goes into like doomer mode, right?
There's people who think in Florida.
Yeah, I know. Believe it or not. And well, as someone who sees and understands like the ramifications of it, obviously he was encouraged to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shows up at City Hall. And I think it was in an FIU City Hall or some type of university. They were doing some kind of event where there was senators and the governor was there. At the time, the governor was Rick Scott. At that time,
Okay.
and he essentially was brushed off because he was a student. He wasn't like a teacher. He wasn't anything but a student. But obviously, he had seen what he was working on, and he was like, "Hey, trying to like present like the evidence and like the studies that he's done and like what he saw."
Yeah.
Completely brushed aside. Nothing.
Yeah.
The same thing happened to one of his friends. He found data that he said, "Holy yikes! This is gonna cause a mass die-off, like a mass die-off of fish." And he was trying to get that data out, and I think one of the I want to say one of the mayors or one of the the people that are up top, but in like the local government. I don't know if it was a mayor or if it was a commissioner, whatever the title is, found out about it and told the university to shut that kid up, to shut him up. Do not like say anything because this is going to affect tourists, the tourism and all this other stuff. And they purposely silenced him. They purposely didn't produce or publish or do anything with his information. And sure enough, we hear in the news 6 months later there was a massive die-off, which affected the fish, which affected the industry anyways, because it turns out nobody likes the stench of dying fish all over the beach.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, that huge die-off that happened off the coast.
Yeah.
Was predicted by that student because he knew and he had the data and was trying to tell people about it and was told to like be silent, or the guy or the person in charge told the university to tell that dude to stop, to not talk about it. And
we're literally in the 2020s and this is still happening. Like we're in the 1820s.
Yeah. And it's the first mistake was that he presented facts. True.
Yeah. Yeah,
and it's like scary.
If you stated your opinions, and they would just call you hysterical. So
yeah, and it's like
you fucking lose regardless.
Mm-hmm. It's so scary that someone could see like the writing on the wall. Like, hey, I kind of figured that like if we don't turn this ship around within a couple of months, we're gonna have like a freaking beach full of dead fish, and like we need to adjust this because something about the algae. Florida has a lot of big problems with that.
Yeah.
And something
it's usually having to do with red algal blooms or algal blooms in general, which are usually caused by runoff of pesticides from agriculture.
Correct. And
it's from some sort of waste facility leak or something like that, which that might have been. Was that a waste facility leak or was that a California thing?
No,
I think
that was
that
was shoot. I would have to ask Kevin what like when that happened, because like I remember covering a like huge like nasty like die-off that happened off the coast of Florida, and it was like fish all over the beach and stuff like that. It was.
I remember that. I don't remember what the cause was.
Yeah, me neither. But
it's due to a chemical runoff. Regardless, it's usually having something to do with either agriculture or heavy industry or fossil fuels.
Right. And
that's
the dude,
how it happens. And what happens is those algal blooms, the algae is basically like toxic to ingest. And so fish die. And then now we're having the manatee problem.
Yes.
Because the ecosystems have suffered so much, and they don't necessarily die usually from algal blooms directly, but they end up starving to death.
Yep.
So now I think there's a rule that says that you can actually feed manatees because of that. They made it so you can actually feed manatees, but now they're having problems with people trying to go up and like attack the manatees.
Yeah, there's my friend was explaining that exactly.
Very true, Maple.
The domino effect is that their seagrass is being destroyed.
Yeah.
So they have no food.
They have no food.
And that's also, I'm sure, another domino effect that will affect some other area. But it's just like scary to think that like you figured out something so catastrophic, and you present it to the people who could solve it, and all you were told was to like shut up and not not say anything.
And even the institutions didn't back you up. You know?
Right, because the university told him stop.
Because automatically it comes down to profit. You know, if those universities weren't for profit, then they wouldn't be as feeling as pressured to silence a scientist, you know? Like it's frustrating. And yeah, as Maple Leaf says, the pursuit of short-term quarterly profits and endless business growth will be the death of our society at the very least.
Yeah, I think that like that mindset definitely is super, super, super pernicious.
Yeah.
Not good. Oh yeah, look, I think somebody found it. Yeah, Echo Wrestle Dragon. Back in 2021, toxic red tide is killing fish, displacing sharks, and going viral on TikTok. Well,
and also the impact for manatees is that they are the main organism keeping the seagrass trimmed.
Yeah,
they're basically the lawnmowers of the seagrass, and so if the seagrass then overgrows, then it kind of kills other organisms that are also accessing the sunlight, and then that kills the ecosystem. So they're a keystone species, I think.
Yeah, the it also like the whole seagrass and stuff like that. They create like super highways for like the little fish that are in between that. Yeah, it was when we were down there. He was explaining all this stuff to me, and like it's really sad. Yeah, sea sheep. There you go, or sea cows.
Yeah.
Back to what you were saying of re-wetting wetlands. That's what he's doing. He's
really.
Yeah, they're pumping water back into the Everglades. Yeah, they're filling the Everglades.
I would love to interview. I would interview him.
I've been trying.
You've been trying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have first dibs for sure.
He's very like shy.
I know. I made so many of those too where I'm like, oh, I would love to have you on here. And they're like, oh, I don't want to show my face on camera. I'm like, oh.
You don't have to. Just answer.
Okay.
Man, I get that. But yeah, he's essentially the projects that are going on there are exactly that. They're trying to pump water into the Everglades and seeing if that has any positive outcomes for the wetlands there.
Yeah.
Short answer or short-term answer, yes. Long-term answer, we don't know because that water comes from somewhere. It could have other effects.
Exactly.
Because I asked him about that.
Exact correct like chemical balance and stuff.
Right.
You know, it's not like you could just put tap water in there.
Yeah, and they have to test the water. They have to, take whatever measurements that they do. He goes out there, I think, every so often, whatever his schedule is, to go out there and take measurements. So the long-term answer to that question is we just don't know. But it seems like in some areas it's improving. But I asked him, I'm like, wait, if you're getting all this water, like, you don't, like, do you know what the water is coming from? No. I'm like, so the whole problem here is the algae. Like, could we risk all these, like, things in that water to facilitate the problem with the algae? He's like, it could be. We don't know. That's why we're doing it. That's why we're doing the science. We don't know.
Yeah. And as James said, also overfishing is definitely a risk too. In Belize, where there's also a lot of endangered manatees. I did an article on manatee stuff like 9 months ago. But in Belize, the main problem is tourism and cruise ships. Cruise ships have been ruining the coastlines, and a lot of boats actually hit manatees.
Oof. That's so sad.
And kill them that way, or they separate mama and baby.
Yeah.
And so that's the main reason why manatees are dying in Belize is the cruise ship tourism. Which made me really freaking sad, because you know who took a cruise ship to Belize in December of 2019?
Oh no.
I was like, fucking hell. And the cruise ship that I went on, the cruise company, is like the worst. It's the worst of it. I'm trying to
Boo.
remember. I think it's Royal or something like that. It's the worst of
Really?
them. And yeah. And I was
Oof.
like, oh, I didn't even have that much fun on the cruise ship to justify killing manatees. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have heard that like the cruise industry is like incredibly
I don't want to go on
toxic.
another cruise ship. I don't want to support cruise industries. Unfortunately, it's just a really easy vacation choice for my grandparents.
Yeah.
But I don't even. The stupid thing is that they usually take you to some sort of tourism dock, or in the case of like one of the places in Honduras, they had their own island,
Mm-hmm.
and so they just took you to their very manicured island. I'm like, so I don't feel like I've even been to the countries.
Oh yeah, yeah. You've been to the tourist section of that. Yeah. The
And literally, I could be it's basically a giant international mall. Like
yeah.
that's how it feels. Yeah. But yeah, so that was unfortunate. But yeah, so overfishing, algal blooms from runoffs, tourism. Did we miss Maine death manatees? Those are the main ones.
Yeah, the main ones are those exactly. They
Yeah.
can't eat, and they're getting messed up because of the boats and whatnot.
Yeah. Which is a shame because they're so cute. They're
Yeah.
so cute and they're so cool. They live in brackish water, which is cool. They actually are pretty smart just by having a super tiny brain to size ratio.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people, a lot of people don't underestimate like animals. I think
Yeah.
like there are people who unironically think that animals don't have any type of like self-awareness or not like you know
Or they're not
capable of
community based,
right.
Like they don't care if their baby dies kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, come on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Nah.
animals are very complex and just like we are,
Yeah.
in
Because we're
different
fucking
ways.
animals.
Yeah. They're complex in different ways and we are complex in different ways. And just because we don't speak their language, does
Yeah.
not mean that they don't have like
Communication.
right or the ability to have like this self-awareness about the world around them. So yeah, I mean like you've got elephants who are capable of experiencing complex emotions like anger or like
Yeah.
grief. They can mourn.
Yeah.
So
Dolphins.
yeah,
Whales.
dolphins have saved people. So how do they know that? Like, how do they know to save somebody? They have to understand what's going on. They don't just do that.
Exactly. And yeah, as Eco said, they're innocent.
Oh yeah,
It just sucks. I mean, we're going to be the first species to cause a mass extinction.
Yeah.
We are the first species causing a mass extinction, the fifth mass extinction. So it's just astonishing. Go us. We're so talented.
Oh man,
we're so talented.
In
We
all
did it
the
so
wrong-
quick too.
Yeah, in all the wrong ways. We have all this
Yeah.
technology, all this capacity, all this, I guess, for all intents and purposes, we'll call it wealth. All this resources, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah,
This is what
seriously.
we're doing.
Hey, Maple, there's actually going to be a closer one in South America. There's also another floating city that's being produced, so maybe we can go to that one because that'll be closer to you.
A floating city?
Yeah,
Nice.
there's a floating city that's being developed in what was it? I made it the main. I think it's Belize. Maybe. Hold on. I did a podcast episode on it. I'm getting tired of me saying that to myself.
Ocean X or another company? Is it a company that's making this?
It's a company in collaboration with the government. So it's like yeah, it's a couple groups working together, which is good. Rather have that than just be a company.
That's right. Oceans also store huge amounts of carbon.
And yeah, honestly, it makes the Amazon look pitiful.
Yep.
How
and
much
are better
carbon?
at force at doing so. And it's all done via the biological carbon pump, where phytoplankton take the carbon. It's eaten by the fish, who are eaten by other fish, and so on until it finds its way to the seabed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maldives. Look at my podcast episode. Let's see, it was a month ago. Talked about it. It was on June 23rd. I talked about it.
Maldives.
The Maldives, they're getting a here I can go through my source link thing to remember what company it was, but they're making like one shaped like a brain coral, a city, which is really cool. And so it's a Dutch company.
Gotcha.
Water Studio is the name of the company that's doing that.
Water Studio?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, one of the geoengineering ideas that people have, which I think is an interesting concept, but I think it's just way too big and scary for me to think about doing something like that, would be dumping a shit ton of iron into the ocean, because iron makes primary productivity more effective, and so it will result in more blooms of algae, and it would then result in more, I don't know why I'm saying algae, I always say algae, and result in more algae taking up more CO2 and storing it, because then their little bodies would die and they would go down to the bottom, and it would just permanently store a shit ton of carbon dioxide. So that's a method that people are considering, as a gigantic iron drop into the ocean. But
Right.
I worry that if they don't calculate it perfectly, it'll go too far and we can end up in an ice age. Or
yeah. What? No. Oh man, no. It's like that Futurama episode where they drop the ice cube ever so often in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
It's just like you just go just a little too far, and then suddenly you're in a completely different situation.
Oh no.
So
no,
that's
thanks.
the problem with geoengineering. You just you block out the sun just a little too much. You end up in an ice age. You take too much CO2 out of the atmosphere. You end up in an ice age. So maybe not. Maybe tiny bit regionally, maybe, but I don't think so, because the ocean is global.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna take a hard pass on just going a little bit too far and then ending up like messing everything.
But that's the geoengineering part of the ocean takes up a ton of CO2. If the ocean wasn't here, I think the ocean takes up how much CO2 does the ocean take up?
The vast majority of it.
The vast majority. I think it's like 90%, but I don't want to be incorrect. How much CO2 does the ocean absorb?
Hi, Upright Lion. Are these floating cities going to be part of countries helping them build them, or are they intended to be as new independent territories like Sealand? I have no idea.
They're part of the countries. At least the one in the Maldives is part of the countries. They're basically just adding another city to their country, and it's right next to the capital, which is very convenient. And they said that they were going to make sure that the prices are comparable to the mainland. So sounds cool, honestly. And see, this is why I don't want to be incorrect. CO2, oceans take up 30 to 50% of the CO2, not 90. That's a lot. But still, if the oceans weren't there to do that, like 50%, imagine if we had 50% more CO2 in the atmosphere right now. I don't know what temperature that would result in us being, but it would not look pretty. So
I know I've seen this stat before. Oh, okay. The 90% is oceans have absorbed over 90% of the extra atmospheric heat caused by human-based greenhouse gases.
The heat.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Yeah, they take up the CO2 and they take up the heat. The ocean. The oceans.
Yes.
Could be plural.
Yes, this number has changed as data from satellites and databanks and other sources have been compiled. So that's where that 90% comes from. It's because it's referencing 90% of the extra atmospheric heat caused by the human specifically based greenhouse gases.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Which has resulted in ocean warming too, which is why we're having a heat wave in Australia and in the Mediterranean right now. Mediterranean's really hot right now. It's like kind of crazy actually, because it's 3 to 5 degrees hotter than normal, and right now the ocean is normally 24 to 26 degrees Celsius. Jeez. So does that mean it's possible for the ocean there to be 104 degrees Fahrenheit? If it's like 26 degrees and it's 5 degrees hotter than that, or 4 degrees hotter than that, that can't be right. Like, I'm very confused about that. but it's hot.
It's very hot. Which I assume is a problem for the fish and the corals and stuff like that in Australia.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I don't know how much hotter the Australian waters are. That was in the Mediterranean, but there's coral reefs in the Mediterranean too, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Off the
Yeah.
coast, like off Australia.
Australia? No, I was referring to oh, I guess. I think of like Spain and that part of the Mediterranean. I forget
Oh, no,
Australia
no,
also
no.
is part of the Mediterranean.
Yeah, I was thinking that area. Nope.
That's funny. That's funny. I'm on the Pacific side. I really don't know anything. That's my excuse.
That's funny.
Yeah. Since the 1990s, libertarians have been talking about building privately funded floating cities so they can evade taxes and other laws they don't like. Oh, they already bought islands for that.
Yeah, I was about to say just do a thing in the Cayman Islands, you'll be fine.
Yeah, you're already set. But yeah, that is funny. They have thought about that, but that's
Uh,
actually I don't know about the South Korea one, but that's not why the Maldives one's being built. They're being built to combat sea level rise.
The technology is almost there to do something like that. You would have to be very picky about location, though. Well,
Yeah.
get to work, libertarians. That's your dream. Let's see
They're
it work
already
out.
building communes in Mexico.
That's true.
They've left, like a lot of Canadians too, have gone straight through the US and gone down to Mexico and started their own communes, but they all like have their own conspiracy theories because
Oh,
they're all
no.
conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers because they originally left for COVID.
What? That's like
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
So they're all trying to create their own little societies and stuff
Yeah,
in the middle of Mexico. Just a bunch of white folk. Just what are you doing?
Which is fine, but like, I don't know how long that's gonna last if your entire society is based on conspiracy theories.
Exactly. They're gonna implode on themselves. They're all gonna have their own disagreements about who's in charge and what their true motives are and all that kind of stuff. And it's just gonna implode, or they're gonna fight with each other, or they're gonna fight with the locals.
Yeah, like
I can't see any scenario that's gonna work out for them.
Having a conspiratorial mindset. Yeah, I don't see that working out.
The only benefit is they have solar panels, so they're off the grid. So at least there's that.
Okay. I guess you can be conspiratorial over there with your solar panels.
I think Jonestown also had solar panels, so.
Oof. Oh man.
Oh no. We're not going the whole environmentalist equals Unabomber route though, because that's just meh. People love to do that too. They're like, well, the Unabomber was an environmentalist, so therefore I'm like, oh god, no.
That's a bad logics.
Every time a mass shooter comes out as some sort of like climate person or like overpopulation style kind of person, which has happened a couple times now in the most recent like mass shootings or stuff, they've said something having to do with either the environment or overpopulation, like relating to the environment. And I'm like, no, don't touch it.
Yeah,
I know Fox News will cover it. Don't touch it.
To build domes over our most important cities, making them immune to rising sea levels.
Hasn't there already been like movies on that?
Yeah, I think we have.
I'm sure it's already a concept that's been played out in cinema and it's never ended well, but I could be wrong. I mean, there are like biosphere domes for like studies and stuff, which I've always wanted to go to one of those. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, see the Simpsons movie. There you go.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, exactly.
The Simpsons movie.
They predicted everything.
That's right.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that, trust me. Well, actually, okay. So now this is the part where I plug my Instagram, but on my Instagram story, I just reshared some sort of, I think it was probably Business Insider or something, that was talking about how Saudi Arabia wants to build this mirror city, which is like this thin column that just like keeps going. And it's like a mirror on the outside, which, first of all, the amount of bird deaths, I'm just saying, if it's going to be mirroring the desert, the amount of animals that are going to run into that shit is just, we haven't even begun. But on the inside, it's supposed to be some sort of like utopia looking stuff on the inside. It's like this tall city that's just self-regulated, just going straight through the desert. So that's a concept. I haven't looked fully into it, but I mean, the diagram makes it look cool.
Okay, so wait, I'm trying to remember because was this recent?
I just saw this today.
Okay.
So,
oh, okay,
yeah.
okay. So they're gonna make like this huge like
Yeah,
structure.
let me see if I can find it. I'm gonna.
Yeah, they're gonna make this huge structure and like already.
Oh yes, the line is what they're calling it. Can someone pull up a link for it, please?
There's already like massive problems with this idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you know. I mean, honestly, as soon as I said that Saudi Arabia was behind it, I was like, I don't think that's going to end well.
Yeah.
I love Saudi Arabia. You can surprise me, but I haven't been that impressed on very interesting ideas like that. Granted, I think they did plan some sort of like mega solar farm or something like that in the desert. So that's a cool concept. I won't knock that, but.
So supposedly it's supposedly going to run on renewable energy. But I don't know how that's going to pan out quite frankly, because well,
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, they're one of also like a big producer of petrochemicals.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that's. I'm not sure how that's going to plan out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, is that I think that's like the second city that I've heard of in Saudi Arabia or in the Middle East that was going to be fully renewable, utopic sort of concept or whatever. And it didn't get finished, or it wasn't done the way it was said it was going to be done.
Yeah.
There's another thing like that I remember hearing about like literally not that long ago. It's the same kind of deal where it's they talk a big game and yet they're really not wanting to follow through because that would ruin their business plan.
Right.
Why would you do that?
Right. It's supposed to be completely run on renewable energy. It'll be about 105 miles long. It's a super mega city project, and well, I mean, like the first issue is the logistics of it. It's how that's gonna mess up the ecology. It's gonna displace
the desert still is an environment, and people seem to forget that.
Yeah. Yeah, you can send it to me because I have like links off Upright Lion.
Oh.
Yeah, you can send it to me. Just send it to me via Whispers. So it's gonna be problematic for the construction and all that. It's gonna displace like indigenous people. There's like some tribes that are there. Who I don't know how to pronounce this. Huaita tribe. In there, with thousands of them. So there's like ethical, environmental questions to be had.
All the use.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll look cool. If it
gets built.
Yeah.
Also, putting a huge mirror near sand, that shit's gonna look pretty for like 2 seconds. And then a sandstorm's going to happen, and that mirror is going to look gross. Also,
yeah. Also, is that going to have like ramifications? Like, you're going to have a giant mirror. I mean, that's going to facilitate heat, yeah? When the sun bounces off the
Goodness, we just had one of those wildfires started by glass bottles.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Let's not add more.
Yeah, so the mirror.
Not that there's all that much to be caught on fire in the desert, but still.
Yeah, just gonna make it even hotter, right? It's gonna reflect the sun back on whatever is facing that.
Yeesh. No, it's okay. So I think we found at least 5 problems with this project.
Yeah.
Just from literally the summary of the project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man. But the illustration looks cool.
Yeah, it does. Until we build orbital elevators, we don't need city shape like that. Sheesh.
True.
I don't even know if we'll be alive to see like orbital elevators where we can just get on an elevator and go into orbit.
I want a jetpack. When are those happening? Huh?
Well, we have jetpacks, just not for us.
Oh.
We have jetpacks, just not for us. Oh, I think I have it here. The actual link.
Here, you show them. I'm gonna be right back. I have to pee.
Okay. Oh, Adam something. Orbital elevator technology is 300 to 400 years down the road. Jeez. Well, unfortunately, we will not be alive to see Halo come true, okay? Oh, shoot. Okay, here, let me show you, folks. This is the artist concept that Upright Line sent me. Well, that's not fair. I won't get to see elevator technology to go into space. That's unfortunate. Yeah, that lagoon is gonna boil away. It's right in front of the mirror. We might never have the materials needed to build an orbital elevator, and Earth's gravity might be less challenging to build one for a body with lower gravity like the moon or Mars. Gotcha.
Hello.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, so this concept, the artistic concept, I'll post it in chat. Hold on. The artistic concept is like this huge mirror, and in front of that mirror, there what looks to be like a little oasis and like a lagoon. I was like, well, that's gone. That's pretty much gone.
Yeah. I really hope they don't actually do this.
Yeah.
I feel like they just talk a lot.
Well, when you have like that much money, you know.
And a desert next to you, it's basically, a lot of people consider it to be like a, empty playing field.
Yeah.
So.
It's not.
It's not.
No.
It will attack you back too, as many countries in the Middle East have seen through terrible sandstorms. Holy crap.
Yep.
That is an extreme weather event a lot of people don't think about. There are sandstorms, but the world's getting windier, so.
Why is that?
I think it has to do with how climate change impacts the jet stream.
Okay. Well, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, but I do remember that there is a study that says that climate change is making the world windier, just in general, which we're definitely seeing because we're looking at like all the wildfires and stuff.
Yeah.
They're getting harder and harder to tackle and easier to burn because there's been a lot of wind too. It's been the drought conditions, the heat, and the wind. It's just a terrible combo.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's more energy in the atmosphere. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. There's more just energy in the system in general, and it's resulting in everything being more extreme.
The image also
we'll probably
shows...
find some connection to earthquakes and volcanoes.
Yikes. Yikes. If we can tie, or if we find out that like earthquakes and volcanoes are tied to climate change, oof.
Yeah. I mean, we already know like the earthquakes that are tied to fracking.
Yeah. That's right.
And waste. Actually, what's interesting is that it's not that the majority of them is tied to the actual fracking action, but it's tied to the waste being shot back into the rocks to store. That is what's causing the majority of the earthquakes, which is very interesting.
Huh.
Yeah. And yeah, so we'll see about the I guess just how maybe how the plate tectonics moves or something. We're going to find that there's some sort of correlation to climate change with how the plate tectonics move, and then it's just going to be everything.
Yeah, the thing about like the Earth's systems and stuff like that is very complex, and moving one piece has
so
like
complex.
unintended. Yeah,
it's so complex, and it just it just amazes me how smart scientists and people that have figured this out for hundreds and hundreds of years, all the research attached onto each other, and an idiot can come along and think that he did his own discovery. Like,
yeah,
do we not understand all the work, all the people involved in this that you think you have galaxy brain over?
Right.
I actually I've had several climate deniers in my Twitch stream chats already.
Nice.
Yeah.
What is like the most common thing? Like, what is the most common thing? Are these people like unironically, or just like there to like mess with,
I'm still learning to detect the difference, to be fair, because to be perfectly honest, I'm not the best at detecting the difference in person. So I have a little bit of trouble with, I have trouble with people that are sarcastic, like knowing that they're sarcastic. I actually think I might be better at checking it online than I am in person. But mostly I would say, I mean, they usually think that we can just continue business as usual and that there's no way that renewables can replace fossil fuels. And that argument in itself is just climate denial, because if you believe that the problem was big enough that the switch had to happen, or that the economy was impacted by climate change, which it is, or also just putting your head in the sand and thinking that economics don't support this switch, which it does. So it's just there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get to that conclusion. But most people have that conclusion because honestly, a lot of people just don't have enough information on the issue to begin with. It's a completely reasonable conclusion if you don't have the information.
Right. Like it's one thing to not understand like what's going on, and then be presented with information and be like, okay, well, we gotta change. Like that's one thing. But there are some people who are willfully seeing this information and then still making the conscious decision of saying, I don't know about that. Which is wild to me. It's such a bizarre concept. But the folks who like come, like, do they have like a counter
Not
argument?
Really. They never really do. They just kind of assume that I'm being dumb, that I don't know my information, and that they somehow know better, but they don't really have, like, I then ask them like, oh, okay, well, how do you think that's possible? Like, give me facts, give me information. And then they'll start talking about how renewables create all this waste and how bad they are for birds and all that kind of stuff. And, just talk shit on renewables and how awful they are and how there's no way that they will ever be able to replace fossil fuels and how the blackouts are definitely due to them. And, just the usual propaganda. Usual propaganda.
Like, the one thing that the closest I've ever gotten to like acknowledging being like, okay, wait a minute, this is something to consider. It's obviously like the there might be ecological like concerns where you build certain things, but I think like overall I think the calculus is, well, the alternative is just like yeeting ourselves into oblivion. So
exactly, like that's our option. People don't attach that part to the fossil fuel option.
Yeah, which is bizarre. It's like
that. It's climate denial. It's later stage climate denial. It's not that we're going to argue that climate change isn't happening, though. Unfortunately, there's still a big gap between people who think it's happening and people who think it's happening because humans caused it. Like, apparently only like 53% of Americans believe that human caused climate change, and 71% of people believe climate change is happening.
What?
Yeah. So there's that 20% that think climate change is happening, but they're not convinced humans are the main cause of it. I'm like, okay.
So
I'm glad we have that 71%.
So what's the explanation?
They think it's natural variation. They think it's natural variation, but the problem is that when you think like that, then isn't the only solution adaptation or geoengineering? Like, if you don't believe that fossil fuels and horrible agriculture practices are the cause of it, then what do you think the solutions are going to be? I mean, hey, if people want to be able to disconnect climate change from clean energy or climate change from changing agriculture practices. If they want to disconnect the two, okay, I'm fine with that. You know, we could talk about air pollution. We can talk about chemical pollution. We can talk about water pollution. We can talk about all these other reasons why we should not continue moving in this trajectory.
Right. And it like all comes down to this. We'll go full circle whether they realize it or not.
Exactly. It's more frustrating to have to go full circle. You know what I mean?
That's like
that takes so much more work.
Right. Like the A to B is 1 mile and we're taking like 10 miles. Like we don't.
Exactly. So it's like, it's super frustrating. And then also, you know, they'll be like, well, what's your proof? What's your proof? What's your proof? And to that, I always respond, oh, well, it's your burden of responsibility to provide me proof because I'm with 99% of scientists. So it's actually your job to prove your side because my side has been proven time and time again. And if you still don't know my side, then that just shows that you haven't done your own research.
Right. Like, why are
Even though you're the one saying, do the research.
Right. Why are you having such a strong opinion? But then when challenged on, like, where are you getting this information, it all of a sudden gets thrown back.
I've literally been sent a PragerU video. Not on Twitch stream, but I've been sent it before.
No. Oh, no.
I got sent a PragerU video by my aunt.
Oh, no.
By a relative. Yeah. But, yeah, well, it's... Yeah, it's
we've
but
been
you know,
to
be
be fair,
her coworker had sent it to her or something like that. So it wasn't even like she didn't even know PragerU existed before that link was sent. So then I was just like, okay, so don't trust PragerU. PragerU is not a trustworthy source at all. And hopefully they heeded my warning. I have no idea.
PragerU, like I love PragerU's like this veneer of like academic, like I guess projection,
literally faking being a university,
right? Like this faux like intellectual, like
it's so pathetic
media apparatus, right? That's what they perceive themselves as.
Yeah.
And it's like when you look at like their sources and their studies and all this, it's like their sources and their links are all going back to the PragerU site.
Yeah, dude.
And their sources are themselves. It's like great. And then like every time
and then you look at all the like lectures and stuff, and they all have either like ties to fossil fuels, if that's what they're talking about, ties to some conservative media, if that's what they're talking about. Like it all goes back to the same sources.
Right. And if you look at the guest that's speaking on the 5-minute video, you can find out what you can pick up what they're throwing down. And it's like, it's hilarious and sad that so many people get swayed by something like that, which is like what I was saying earlier, like going against the consensus is like the new punk rock. And it's like, no. no. If like you wouldn't do this, if like I know this is like a silly analogy or silly, I guess, hypothetical, but you wouldn't go, you start feeling bad and you start looking at different doctors and you end up with 10 doctors and 9 of them say you have cancer. And then the one guy says you don't. And they're like, oh, well, that's it. That's the guy.
Some people go there, though. They will go to them because they will be selling some holistic bullshit crystal medicine. And that just sounds like a cheaper, better option, even though they'll scam you out of plastic pebbles, like
right. And it's like, yeah, that's the guy. Like if a consensus of like a scientific community, it's not that like you can't be wrong, because like obviously, science changes its mind all the time. That's the whole point. That is the whole point. And then like if you do that, then it's like, well, 5 months ago you were saying like, okay, well,
yes, yes, yeah, right. Rai says, I'm against climate change and I shop at Hot Topic. I'm a rebel.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I
have one shirt from Hot Topic still. Ironically, it has Eevee and all the Eevees of all forms on there.
Nice. I have it's over there. I need to put it up like in my thing. I have a Vaporeon plushie. That's like my
we were meant to be friends.
Yeah. That's my favorite Pokemon.
Yes. Vaporeon's my favorite Pokemon. So
nice. Okay, sweet. That is pretty freaking cool. That is pretty cool.
Now I completely lost our train.
Yeah, so
we were ranting about idiots.
Yes.
Well, okay, so also that I won't even say they're idiots. It shows it's foundationally it's a failure in some aspect of education, whether or not it has to do. And I'm not shitting on teachers because poor fucking teachers right now. I feel so bad for them, with everybody calling them woke and like wanting their kids to argue with them, and having their parents that know nothing go to the townhouse or town meetings and telling them not to, teach them sexual education or I'll show up with a gun. Like, I feel
which
so bad.
Like,
and they're being underpaid.
Yeah, like, and they're being underpaid. They're, dealing with all kinds of shenanigans.
Dealt with the pandemic. Like, oh my gosh, my heart goes out to teachers so much. Like, I feel so bad for them. I feel so bad for them. And most of them are advocating for, how we're teaching history, how we're teaching science, all that kind of stuff to be changed. And they're being ignored too. All the research that shows what we should and how we should be teaching is being completely ignored. Which we have a substantial amount of research to show how to teach people, how there's many different lines of teaching that work for different people. And like, there's so much restructuring of the education system that needs to happen. Yeah. But our lack of critical thinking and our lack of understanding how the scientific method works, also in the way of media, because every other week we have whether or not chocolate's good for you, whether or not coffee's good for you, whether or not, all these different things. And it gets people in the mindset. I don't think we do that as much anymore. I think there's a lot of talented science communicators out there. I think the gap has been filled enough for me to actually have a really hard time even getting into a job like that. But we still have that mentality that because we've been exposed to so many things where media takes up these research articles that have not been peer reviewed yet, or they don't talk to scientists that are not a part of the study, which is another really important thing to do. To get some outside perspective, to get some larger perspective outside of a study, to look at what the sample size of the study is that was conducted.
Reading is hard. Okay.
Reading is hard.
Understanding the data that's being, it's one thing to read a study, and there's another thing to understand and interpret the study and what it's telling you. Because and there's so much disconnect between like people who like think that they have like a gotcha with like studies and stuff like that, and then like it turns out they never actually read it, or if they did, they have absolutely no idea what it's talking about. I'll go back to that example with the dude who came in trying to like provide me studies and stuff like that, and when we look at the actual studies, they were like studies on like atmospheric stuff, like has nothing to do with like the concept of like climate change and why because the premise was climate change isn't that big of a deal and it's not being caused by us, and like the studies that you give me is like by like atmospheric trends, like okay, seems
exactly. I mean,
the study's legit, but you're giving me studies on trends from the atmosphere, like whatever. This has nothing to do with what I'm
also
they
like to zoom up on the graph, so it only shows like the last like 10 years or so, and it doesn't show like the exponential curve part of it. They only show the little up part. They don't show or they show like that, but like this way. Like it's crazy to me. It's concerning. And so I don't even feel bad for, most people that just don't get it. Like, it frustrates the hell out of me, don't get me wrong. And I'm quick to lose my patience, and I'm working on it. Because unfortunately you have to have a lot of patience in this line of work. But yeah. And to be fair, the people who were in charge of communicating that stuff, the journalists and stuff, for a long time, we weren't very good at talking about science. We're only now getting good about talking about science. And that has unfortunately sowed a mistrust in science, and it's sowed a mistrust in the media, which is very unfortunate.
Because that's so frustrating, because I was talking to the same person that I was saying that's like doing research in the Everglades and is working on restoration projects and has gone to the Arctic and has done all this other stuff. I've asked him, and I've like talked to him about it, like, hey, why aren't you guys up in front in the media? Like, why aren't you guys more out there and like doing conferences like that have nothing to do with the government, nothing to do with anything, just like you, a camera, the internet, and just telling what you guys are finding, and just like explain this to people, but like on a one-on-one basis. Kind of like how Bill Nye did like a little segment, kind of like that, but like actual like climate scientists who have done this for decades and decades and decades and decades. Not like, like Bill Nye isn't a climate scientist, and he I think he even went up to Congress and be like, why am I here? for yeah, like why am I here?
Yeah.
I'm like an engineer or something. Like I have nothing to do with
Yeah,
this.
he is an engineer. Yeah.
Yeah, like I have nothing to do with this. But the climate scientists who have done decades of this work, who have dedicated their lives, I was like telling my friend, like, hey, you know, more of you need to be out there. Like more of you need to be in the front of like the camera, for a lack of a better term. Like you guys need to be out there doing like media conferences. Like it doesn't even have to be from like the press MSM conferences, but like have I don't know, YouTube channels, or have like Facebook communities where you guys can try to like reach out to people as a one-on-one, because people aren't getting it as a whole. People,
what did he say in response to you saying that?
I agree, but how? A lot of us
yeah.
A lot of us are.
I don't think it's the scientist's job, to be honest. It sucks because they're already doing so much. They're the ones doing the research. And I mean, okay, so I've been doing this career path of talking to scientists and writing about their work for several years now. And a lot of scientists are extremely talented, extremely passionate about their work, but sometimes it can be really hard for them to communicate in a way that people outside of their lab understands. It's a challenge because when you are, and this is something that highly educated people have problems with, they've been living in their bubble for such a long time that they forget what other people don't know. I have that problem with climate change stuff all the time because I live in this world, and I forget, oh, people don't know. Like my neighbor just said, so what's this whole climate issue about?
No, the what? Okay, yeah. Hold on. Do you have like 5 hours? Just sit here really quick.
I know, right? I was like, how do I begin? The neighbor next to him, I had subscribed to my climate change channel. So,
nice.
we got different levels of understanding, but it shouldn't be the job of scientists entirely to put themselves out there. Also, it's scary because the don't look up scenario, it happens all the time. I've talked to so many scientists who have been burned by the media because they didn't get their research out correctly.
Yeah, well,
I've met that multiple
true.
times. It still happens. But at the same time, I will also say sometimes scientists care a little too much about the details. They care a little too much about their details. I get it. The research is their baby. They've been focusing on it for years. They want everything to be absolutely correct. But sometimes when you dumb things down, it makes it so they're not 1,000% correct, but it's like close enough that people that don't understand what you're talking about can get a general idea. Yeah. And that's the closest that you want. But sometimes scientists get a little too caught up in the details of the project that they don't focus on the why or the ramifications or, that element. And that's where journalism or some sort of communications organization, they're the ones that need to be in charge of showing that research.
Yeah, so well, basically, so then it would have to be an effort between the scientists and I guess the media people who are putting this out there.
As Rye said, scientists are not media trained, and you have to be trained. You have to be trained to know how to talk in front of the camera.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You don't want to get tripped up.
Yeah, and all that, all it takes is one trip up. All it takes is one mess up for it to be viral.
Exactly. You have the pressure of not only your credibility, but the credibility of the institution that you represent. That's a lot of pressure to put on people. You have the credibility of your field. All of that is on top of you when you are in front of a camera talking to people about your research. And again, for the longest time, having to do with things like climate change, we didn't have those rapid attribution studies. So scientists could never say, we know this is true. They can only say this might be happening.
Yeah, and then
this is likely to be the case.
That's it. That's all it takes.
Media, they don't do that. That's not a news story.
Yep.
If it's gradual or if it's unsure, it's not a news story. Or they jump on the news story and then it ends up doing the whole chocolate is good, chocolate is bad, chocolate is good, chocolate is bad kind of thing, right? So understanding what nuance is when it comes to issues is another thing that people really don't understand.
Science is all about that. Like that's the whole point of it. Like And this is why I kind of like related it to the whole like COVID thing, because like people just didn't in my opinion, I could be 100% wrong, but people didn't seem to understand that what we were looking at was something that we've never encountered before, and
Mm-hmm.
like we were doing science live. And so like people were seeing and hearing different things, and next week or next month they were being told something else, and like, well, then I don't get what the whole point of this is. It's like, bro,
Yeah.
we didn't have that
Yeah.
information. We had no idea. Like,
Yeah. So it's on a lot of people, right? It's on the public to have a better understanding of the nuances of science and the process of science and, that sort of thing. And then it's up to the communicators to understand what the most important aspects of looking at a study are, and knowing what sources are good and what sources are bad, and what things need more time before you write about them and what things you can write about immediately, and not always just focusing on the breaking news or trying to, break the news and then getting stuff wrong because you have a quick deadline.
yeah,
Journalists are far too stressed. We don't get paid enough, and it's a whole thing too. And then you have the scientist's responsibility to, whether it's contacting the media to get more information out there, or whether or not it's getting media trained or getting hooked up with one of those organizations that can help you, but having some sort of communication arm, because that's also necessary. You can't just stay in your lab. And I think most scientists understand that, to the extent where they're gluing themselves and handcuffing themselves to things,
Yep.
Just swing it all the way back to the beginning of our whole discussion.
Yep. Somebody said that scientists aren't media trained, and they'll usually get massacred in the spotlight. It's not their shit. Yeah. Like, I'm starting to backpedal on that, because like it was an original idea that I had like years ago. Maybe we're talking 2 something years ago when I talked to him, and while he agrees with like the superficial concept of like going to people and educating people, it's just not as easy or as feasible as it sounds in my head. So it's like, well, yeah, I think you might be right. 100%. Like,
it's complicated, as is everything. It's so frustrating.
We don't want like a single scientist who might be like freaking brilliant and has done life's work about this, and then like all of a sudden trips up on something so simple, or so like, or the media takes the exact wrong take on what he was saying, and then like now we've got the public believing X, Y, or Z, or like the complete opposite of what he was trying to say, or he or she was trying to say. It's like, oh.
Yeah, it's literally the worst. It's awful. As Maple Leaf Dragon says, I'm fortunate to be able to speak scientist and speak. I dropped out of high school and I can translate between the two. Yeah. It's part of my job. It's part of my job too, Maple. Yeah. It's an important job, and more people are getting interested in that line of research. I have met. Obviously, I'm in the field, so my view is saturated, but I've met so many climate communicators. And again, it's really hard to get into the field of climate journalism. It's actually quite difficult because they are prioritizing their senior people for that position, for in like media organizations, which is really cool because it means that they're definitely prioritizing it, but it's hard for entry-level journalists like me to get into the field because of it. But it's cool to see that they are prioritizing the people who do know their shit. But it's a combination of the communicator knowing their shit and scientists relaying their shit, And also, if you get a TV person that doesn't know anything about climate change and they have a scientist in front of them who has been in the lab for 6 years, that's literally the worst combination ever.
Yeah, because like the person might not know anything, the TV person might not know anything, but they're media trained.
And ask all the wrong questions.
Right. Or the opposite. Like, yeah, they may ask the wrong questions about like what's significant and what's important to address. Or worse, they are a bad actor, bad faith actor, and are media trained. So even though they're not known, maybe they don't know diddly squat about climate change, but they're like, hey, this is an opportunity to own like the scientist who's coming on, and we're just gonna like essentially destroy like this person's credibility, or at the very
least, how
Matt
Walsh did with that like professor of psychology or whatever in his latest.
Oh yeah, like they'll take something that like, and it doesn't even have to, because it's all filmed, it's all edited. Like they don't even have to get like the full context of what they're saying. It's just enough. Like media is media is media. It's like
and then scientists, well-meaning, will say yes to these interviews, not knowing that they're going to be gotchas, and then get burned by the whole media organization and think that all media is like that.
Right.
And that sucks.
Yeah, and it's like, to a degree, like, I could totally see that, but that's not how it works.
No. I mean, obviously, like, it also comes down to, we just like putting people in boxes. We like putting all the media together in a box. We want to put Fox News with NPR in the same box. And it's like, they're not the same thing.
Nope, they're not the same
thing. And we do the same thing with scientists too, regardless of if they're from some fossil fuel think tank or if they're from Yale or whatever.
appeal to authority. They see a PhD or whatever, a doctorate's next to their name, and they're like, oh yeah, look, there we go, boom, let's put that on the front. And
they also don't understand what it means to get a degree, as you were talking about earlier with the grad student that wasn't believed and stuff like that. I mean, that's like a bad combination between scientists not being believed and also kids not being believed, because student equals kid for a lot of people, even if they're 30 years old.
Right. And like, but it's like, it's so bizarre that like the university took these steps, seeing what he did, took the step to be like, yeah, we can't publish this, or like, yeah, we need you to. I've
heard of that before.
We need you to not talk. We need you to stop. So like, just shut up. Like, stop. Do not say anything. If you say anything, there's gonna be like government, mayor, whatever the person was, is gonna be up our ass. You can't say anything.
Yeah.
Like,
and that sucks.
That's just wild. Wild. Like,
yeah. So we need to find some way to change the incentivizations for a myriad of things and the structures for a myriad of things is what I've gotten from this, because goodness, we've talked about so many things in this whole conversation. My goodness. Yeah.
Scientists are not policymakers. Yep.
No, and though they should be to some extent, which is I believe, is that, yeah, that's right, that's the role of the regulatory bodies, is that they have scientists, and that's how they usually go about doing things, instead ideally of like Congress.
Yeah, ideally you don't want Congress like making decisions about complex things like climate change. Ideally you delegate that, which is the whole point of the EPA. You delegate these bureaucracies, and hopefully, ideally, you would have these bureaucracies headed or at least staffed by people who know what they're doing, or being advised by people who know what they're doing. Like,
yeah. It it's interesting because, okay, so like I have not figured out my whole, I don't want to even say political affiliation, but like my whole like political ideology is constantly developing, constantly evolving, right? But where I'm at now, as it should, exactly. But where I'm at now is I feel like a lot of the failings having to do with the government. And of course, there's so many things, especially having to do with certain parts of the government that are not working right, that are failing people, that are causing environmental injustices and all that kind of stuff, working with corporations to cause these issues. I feel like it comes from a lot of underfunding in certain areas and legacy electorates, people that are either getting the power position because of some sort of legacy capability or money, and it results in a lot of that, because I'm trying to think of like the difference between, because for example, when we're talking about things like democratic socialism and stuff like that, part of that has to do with more government intervention, not trusting corporations to some extent, right? But then it can be easily rebuked by saying, oh, well, governments have done all these terrible things, just like corporations have. So why would we trust them? And so then that goes to, okay, well, why were they doing terrible things versus why are corporations doing terrible things? I think corporations do terrible things because of profit margins, usually.
Right.
And stakeholders. Why are governments doing terrible things? Are they doing terrible things because of the private sector or the public sector? Is it humankind? What is it? So, and then you look at other countries in the world and they're not quite as fucked up as the US. Some other countries are more fucked up than the US. And so it's an interesting conversation. I don't know. I just opened up a huge can of worms, I know.
Yeah, like the thing is, like, government isn't working because government is like right now the way our the way our institutions have or are breaking down are because, well, at the end of the day, special interests have an undue influence of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like,
So like
case
money in politics kind of thing.
yeah, like the classic example is like that expose of that I think it was a Greenpeace guy who went undercover and exposed, like, like Joe Manchin's basically the kingmaker.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is the classic like example, but like it's everywhere in Congress. You have like people like Nancy Pelosi, and like most of like Congress is unbelievably good at profiting off like um profiting off like the stock market and things. Their gains in their investments always outperform like normal boundaries. Why is that? It's because they have insider information.
Yeah.
And like
Sure.
the cycle continues. Like a lot of these people, once they leave office, already have like good relations with like these mega corporations and whatnot. So you just get cushy jobs as analysts or as advisors or whatever, and or become lobbyists themselves for these corporations. So like the cycle continues. And of course, wow, coincidence that a lot of these bills that are supposed to address issues like climate change get torpedoed by people who are, well, tied up in that.
Fossil fuel funded.
Correct. So like a lot of these problems are institutions that are supposed to be functioning in an XYZ manner are not. To have like a healthy democracy, you need three things. You need strong institutions, in other words, institutions that function as is or as supposed to. You need transparency, meaning you need to know what's going on. Information, like information is power. And three, you need inclusivity.
We need so much more transparency.
Yes, and three, you need inclusivity, meaning people need to participate. And the way the system is set up right now is almost all but guaranteeing that a good enough swath of the population is apathetic, and enough of that. If enough of that population is apathetic, then business as usual. We don't have to.
Yeah,
what?
Which is partially due to the decline in unions. I mean, one of the reasons when when we were starting up a lot of this super consumeristic capitalistic methods, I feel like the worst impacts weren't shown as much because at least there was a big union presence. And now that union presence is gone. And so corporations are even more able to just run away with whatever they're doing. And a lot of politicians aren't backing unions because, well, unions would hurt their bottom line because they're attached to all these big corporations or the stock market.
Right.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've only been diving into, honestly, the political elements of stuff heavily within the last like couple of years. Like I'm very new to the world. I feel like, constantly my eyes are being opened to more and more of the world, which is just exhausting.
Yeah, the more you learn, the more like the more you learn, the more you realize how things really are effed up. Like yeah, doing this on a daily basis, you start to notice things and you start to understand how this works.
But that's how you get numb. You get. I feel like because like sometimes you go into the whole like black pill, like we're fucked, like doomeristic, everything. I feel like there's a hill you gotta climb before you're just numb. I'm mostly just numb. When I first started doing like the climate recaps and the podcasts and stuff, like I cried all the fucking time. Like I was not okay, and I'm still sometimes not okay, but like I'm a lot more usually okay than I used to be.
It starts to get rough the more like you put the pieces together. And you start to realize like people had just absolutely lost it. People have lost the plot. People are lost in the sauce, like arguing about like stuff that like people have been led to believe that at this point in time, like we're so divided, and it is enormously problematic because at some point, like there needs to be a line drawn, right? At some point, like I understand that, like, oh yeah, this is all toxic and whatnot, but like at some point you have to draw a line, right? And like you cross the line when you start taking away people's like rights. That's a huge no-no. That's a huge no-no, and like that line was crossed when they like went after like the whole Roe v. Wade thing. That was it. Like they completely like line was crossed. You're trying to deny people's like right to bodily autonomy. Like you're done. The same thing goes when like people, and the same concept goes when we're so polarized. But yes, we're polarized. But the problem here is, well, we've got a big enough swath of the population believing in complete and utter delusions. Like they're completely lost. Like they're living in a quite literally alternate reality. Some folks still believe that like the election isn't even like real. Like
the majority of the Arizona primaries, the GOP Arizona primaries, didn't believe the election happened, or said that to get votes anyways.
Right. Yeah, either they said it or believe it, which either way makes the consequences are the same, right?
Yeah.
You're living in a literal alternate reality, and like you can't reason with that. Like, what do you do?
Exactly. If there's not even the same playing fields, then like you can't have a conversation. Like, and that's, but you know, I think a lot of people are in those delusions because the vast majority of people believe that things are fucked up right now, and everybody has their own reasons for believing why it's fucked up or how to fix it, you know? Like I have this libertarian I maintain in my Instagram messages. I met him on Tinder like once in college. We went on one date, and ever since he just kind of occasionally just comments on my Instagram posts and stuff, and I allow it because he annoys the shit out of me, but he forces me to think about a lot of things, like just like elements, you know. He believes that the Federal Reserve is the reason behind inflation, and that they're printing a vast majorities of money, and that's why inflation is the way it is. You know, he is full on just let the free market flow kind of person and stuff like that. So like we obviously don't agree on a lot of things, but it's interesting to have those conversations. And the bottom line is that both of us don't like how the situation is now. And both of us think that corporations and governments are fucking shit up. Now the diversion comes with whether or not you think that which one's fucking up more.
Sure.
Which one can you trust more? And also whether or not you believe humanity inherently is more likely to be good or be bad about something.
Yeah, I actually had this discussion with a friend too. Like we were arguing about the concept of morality. And he's like, well, I think humans inherently are just bad. And I'm like, I don't think so.
I had that conversation with someone too recently, and they also thought it was bad, and I also don't think so.
Yeah, like I don't think our primary directive is just to be bad, right? Like that we weren't born being assholes, right? Like we weren't born being like pieces of shit. No. This is all like shaped and warped with our environment. And if our environment, because like I didn't want to get into this whole thing because like I don't like to do that because like he's a very close friend, and like I was just arguing.
I understand that.
Like I was arguing for the sake of like the philosophical concept, because like I just genuinely don't think that like people like their prime directive is bad. And he was like, well, if we weren't moral, if we didn't like need morality, then like like the whole argument was like he thinks that morality had to be created, therefore we didn't have it. I'm like, well,
is he religious?
Yes.
The person that I was talking to was also religious, and he thinks that morality is going downward as people are moving further and further away from God, and we're becoming more terrible.
Yeah, well, as a result. Thank goodness he didn't go that route, because like that would have just like I would have like continued to like push, but like he basically made the argument like, well, morality had to be invented, therefore we never had it. And I'm like, well, that's not true, because like how do you know? Just because we didn't call it morality doesn't mean like our primitive species didn't have it, or like other species don't have it either. Like I was saying earlier, elephants absolutely understand the concept of like mourning. They absolutely understand the concept of like revenge,
sharing.
Yes, community. And revenge. So like they do have a concept of morality, right?
Yeah.
Whether they call it that or whether elephants even understand the word morality is irrelevant.
Exactly. You know, people get caught up in language all the time, and you know that could be an argument also for like liberals and leftists, is we get caught up with language all the time, like with things being correctly termed and stuff like that, and then we accidentally do things like say defund the police, and that wasn't the best phrase we could have used.
Well, yeah, like but I understand what the concept is, right? Like like language is important, and language should be
language is extremely important, and I understand why people are picky about the language, but at the same time also it's important to recognize that language is a social construct, and that just because maybe someone didn't use the exact right word doesn't make their argument invalid. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's true. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, sure. Like, you could say, like, maybe, like, as a PR move, like, defund the police wasn't exactly good because then it got co-opted, and then, like, people were talking about different things when they used the same word, and, like, all this other stuff got conflated and intermingled, which is, like, a
Yeah.
fair point. But, like, at the end of the day, like, the core concept of, like,
The
hey,
core concept is
we
still
have a
correct, and it
problem.
drives me
Yeah.
crazy how then people on the other side will only focus on the language and think
Yeah.
that that's the
And
biggest
it's like they
thing.
just want to take away the police. It's like, no, that's not what. No.
And they use and they create like a straw man argument off of it.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
but when you have situations where a perfect example that ended up like kind of proving the point was like the Uvalde incident, right? Like the Uvalde police had like 40% of the budget. For what?
Yeah.
For what? Like humans are inherently selfish. Compassion is a learned trait. I don't know if we're inherently selfish.
I
maybe
disagree.
Maybe to survive, but like
I think, and obviously, no one's going to have a correct answer on this, but my interpretation just goes back to the hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
I don't think that anyone is incapable or doesn't have compassion in them, but I think when you are at a dire situation, you do go back to yourself. I don't think that necessarily equates. I mean, I guess it could just vaguely be selfishness, but it's more just putting on your own oxygen mask before assisting others. That's how humans start. Is they start like in their, in the most terrible situations, they will look out for themselves and just try to survive. Compassion is like the next step of the hierarchy, is that once you have the means to survive, then you have the means to look outwardly from yourself and know whether or not you're able to help others. If you're not even able to survive and you can't even think like that, then you often can't go to that level. Not to say some people don't, though, because you see people all the time, like homeless people helping other people,
Yeah, like
you
that.
See,
yeah, exactly. But that's
that
like
all the time.
Exactly.
But that they're usually stories because it's not quite as common.
Yeah, and but I think that like our primary directive is obviously we're social people, we're social creatures, and we are geared to work in a society. Like that's how we do. Obviously, like our prime directive is to be social. Like we work together. Like that meme. It's like whenever I try to describe like whenever there's like a lefty meme going like that was going around. It's like whenever I try to like describe socialism to people, it's like apes work better together from that scene Planet of the Apes. Or it's like like we work better together. The whole point is to work together. Like all of all of this like unnatural characteristics are because we created this unnatural like systems, right? I would say the economic systems that we create are fake. We made these things up. They're unnatural. Like there's no like system in nature that like that does like your money or your life, kind of deal.
Right.
We don't.
Exactly.
It's unnatural,
exactly.
so it creates scenarios where people are forced to be selfish,
naturally mean. Yeah.
So like people are like, conditioned, by these kind of stuff. Like, holy yikes! Hey, Bleep Blop Ben rating with a party of 43. Holy yikes! Woo! Welcome everybody. Welcome. Folks, if you don't know who Bleep Blop Ben is, she is a phenomenal content creator and incredibly intelligent. Okay. I would highly recommend that if you don't know, please check out twitch.tv/bleeplopben, and please do not attempt to argue with her with economics. Please do not do that. Please do not do that.
She should be the one in this conversation.
Stress is a social construct. I think like what they're Carpe, what you're saying is like, all of this doesn't seem right because it isn't. We're being forced into situations where we act this way. I don't think it's our primary directive to necessarily. Yes, Galaxy Brain Thursdays on TYT, by the way. She is a TYT contributor, or does a host or segment called Galaxy Brain on Thursdays. Ben, if you're still here, what time do you do it on Thursdays, or is it Fridays? shoot. I usually just like kind of peruse around, and I want to say it's about 4 p.m. that she goes on. I want to say 4 p.m. Eastern. Like for some reason, 4 sticks out to me. Yes, 4 p.m. Eastern. Okay, there we go. Boom, 4 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. Okay. I was like, for some reason, 4 really sticks out. Okay, yeah, catch her on Galaxy Brain, 4 p.m. Eastern time on the TYT channel on Twitch, and go to twitch.tv/bleeplopben. Do the follows, do the supports, do the things. Also, please go follow twitch.tv/carpetpacks. There's a couple of diamonds on stream, so if you see them, just hit the follow button, do the thing. Thank you so much for
What's that with the
rating. I
diamonds
appreciate
mean?
that. The diamonds are VIPs, and usually I do the VIPs for people who are content creators or some type of artist or streamer.
Am I a VIP?
You should be.
I have no idea.
If you're not, you should be.
I'm new to Twitch, to be perfectly honest. Like watching and being on it, I'm pretty new to it because I'm not a gamer, and I like many people thought Twitch was mainly just for gamers. So I'm getting to learn all the Twitch things.
There you go. Okay, so hopefully I did the right thing. Yeah. So if you see any folks like that, just
good to know. Good to know. That's awesome. I didn't know you had that many content creators in the chat. I love that.
Yeah, they like a lot of people, and like a lot of these communities, especially like a lot of like left-leaning communities and lefty communities, they're all like very tight-knit. So often you'll see like people reaching out to each other, and people like in each other's chats. Like I hang out in a lot of different people's chats. Like I'll be in one chat, like I'll be in Bleeplop Ben's, I'll be in James from the Internet's chat. I'm a moderator at the Majority Report.
Nice.
So like I'll be around. I'll be around, and the same thing goes. Like people are very tight knit and very kind. So we'll all kind of just like be, even though like we're doing our own thing, like a lot of people tend to help out, and a lot of people tend to do
I love that.
Yeah, do what Ben did and bring their wonderful community over. So like that kind of stuff like is pretty cool.
I love that. I've met some of the people in like the leftist like YouTube sphere and stuff like that, and they're all really, really nice. Yeah, the climate sphere and the YouTube or in the leftist sphere, we can collab sometimes.
Yeah, and often they like interact because like, well, yeah, I mean, if you try to look for answers, like unfortunately, the right wing is still debating whether or not it's true or whether
it's happening. Exactly. It's like, yeah, I would love to not be so obviously blue sometimes, but it can be really hard to.
Yeah, and I don't think it should. I mean, I don't think it should matter because, like, at the end of the day, like the truth is the truth is the truth.
And exactly. I try to think about, okay, well, what is my target audience? My target audience is not the people that are still deniers in 2022. Those are not my audience members because, or they're not my target audience. If they join, that's great. But like, they're not the people that I'm trying to convince because I am so done trying to convince people that climate change is happening or that humans are causing it. We've moved on. Yeah. If you want to figure that out, you can figure that out, but I'm more connecting to people who know it's a problem, maybe don't know the extent of how bad it is, and then also want to know what is going on to fix it.
Right. And, I think that last part is important. Like
that part's important. We need to argue about the actual solutions, not arguing whether or not it's happening.
Yeah, because we already know that. Like so we should know that. We should know that we're past the point where we're doing some stuff that's not good, and we're gonna have some catastrophic domino effects that come from it. The question is, yay, we get to see the kitty live.
Yes. Say hi.
She's like, what? I need to bring Bucky to the cat. Yes, rage and solidarity.
You. He was rubbing against my leg, so I was like, oh, he should join. And he's going to climb up on me. Cat butt, thank you for
Oh no. Boop,
oh
boop.
no.
I assume that anyone saying it's not real is in bad faith, or I ignore them. Like, yeah, or just someone who just really, like, it's hard to tell on the internet because usually people come here to mess with people.
They're just being trolls.
Yeah, so they'll say things to rile people up in the chat. But it's just, it's just what it is. Like, it is what it is. You'll get people in
Yeah.
here trying to argue and like trying to bring in like the most asinine like uh sources and whatnot. But it is what it is. I think like at this point, like the discussion is how fast can we move, what we have available, what tools do we have available now that can be deployed.
Yeah. Like, I'll talk with people about like nuclear, because I think most people are on the conservative side, not to just, I guess, black and white the issue or whatever, but a lot of people that are climate positive that are on the conservative side usually are like nuclear or death, like it's only nuclear, that is the only thing we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Or they'll talk about like carbon capture, hydrogen, and biofuels, which all three of those are easy ways for the fossil fuel industry to continue on business as usual, because all of them are either made as a byproduct, as a supplement, or as a helping measure for the fossil fuel industry. Not to say that any of those things are bad on their own, though. Not to say nuclear is bad, not to say biofuels. I mostly say biofuels is bad. I mean, I'm mostly not a fan.
There's issues, especially how it's made and corn and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. It takes up like the agriculture industry. It's hurting our food system because we're relying on it for corn. But if we try to use it for like, I don't know, use waste or something like that. But even then, it's not a perfect system. It doesn't reduce emissions down to zero or frankly close to that. So yeah, but anyway, so usually when it is on people on the conservative side who want to have a conversation about the solutions and stuff, it's just trying to figure out, okay, so which solutions are you referring to? Do you think that it's an approach that should only be done through the economy or through regulation and the economy? Do you how much carbon capture should be a role and fossil fuels should go into the future?
Yeah.
And
usually
talking
their answer
about
is like
how
the free
much
market and then just dabbing that's
exactly
it.
Exactly. It's like, oh, we don't need any systemic changes, we can continue doing exactly business as usual, and all we need to do is put this many attachments to these many fossil fuel plants, and then maybe we'll go ahead and decrease the amount of fossil fuels in there, but that's just not as much of a priority. You can increase the amount of clean energy as you want, and battery storage, sure, fine, whatever, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to decrease fossil fuels. And I'm like, or decrease fossil fuels down to zero and use wind and solar and nuclear, but mostly just nuclear, because wind and solar can't do anything compared to nuclear. And use hydropower, except for the fact that, droughts are kind of making it hard for hydropower and for nuclear.
Yeah, which makes me question the extent of the knowledge of the issue here. If you're talking to me like, so anybody that tries to sell you a silver bullet to something that's so complex and like, oh, we'll just do this, and it's like, well, methinks you don't have either the knowledge to explain this, or you are trying to sell me something, in which case, like, I'm gonna press X to doubt anybody that sells you a simple solution, like solve this problem with one neat trick. Like, no, I don't think that's how that works.
Like, why would we want to do that? I thought we wanted to diversify our energy supply so that we are less reliant on any one company or one type of energy supply. Like, if we only relied on nuclear, that'd be so easy for our adversaries to bomb our own nuclear plants, and boom, that's it. Yeah, like don't you want to like diversify, make us a harder target?
Right. Like, if you want to come from that perspective of like, yeah, like we want to be energy independent. Well, do you? Because this is a good way of making energy independent, is by creating energy that does not rely on such a product like fossil fuel. Like, we have an abundance of renewable energy that is more than capable of handling our needs right now, or at least close. At least my point is, like, we have the technology. We don't need to wait 10, 20 years into the future for some miracle technology to come. Yeah, exactly correct. We can't, but we don't need to rely on like the market's going to produce some technology 30 years into the future. It's like, no, we have technology capabilities now that we should be deploying, and like the economy and the market is going to mean diddly squat if we have nothing. The market or the economy is going to be nothing to nobody if nobody can eat.
Exactly. And Yeah. So like those are some things I hear, and I'm not going to try to assign a political side to one way or another of what those people think, but usually it ends up being more on the conservative side of what people believe. But also another one that I hear that's not necessarily conservative, but it's just that why are we blaming fossil fuels? Like not for the climate change, but like can fossil fuel companies be moved into the future and move to clean energy?
No.
No.
The short answer is no. Because profits.
Well, exactly. So there's like many reasons, right? So okay, so there can be an argument, right, that it would be the easiest thing for the current monopolies of the energy industry to move towards clean energy as the quickest way to decarbonize ourselves. And this way of thinking of just pivoting monopolies to do something else we've used in other techniques, right, when it comes to like reducing some sort of environmental or human health impact of something. We just shift monopolies to do something slightly different, right? And the reason why I don't think that this is possible to do for fossil fuels in the energy sector is, one, because they're still fucking lying. They're still fucking lying and paying for people to lie. It's not like we're talking about what they did in the 80s. It's happening right now still too. So one, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Literally can't trust them at all. Two, right now they're focusing on buying up clean energy, particularly offshore wind energy. And I don't know whether or not they're going to do that to either monopolize the clean energy industry or if they're going to do that to slow down the clean energy transition. I don't know which way they're going to do that. They might be doing a combination of both. It's something I want to look more into because that makes me really nervous whenever they're buying up stuff. But also progress. Like, can't we just have, I don't know, like people that or companies that weren't started by boomers be in charge of the energy generation of the future?
The issue there is like the whole but that's the issue, right? Like why do they pay so much money? Why do they pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to lobby? Why do they pay all this money? Because, well, at the end of the day, it comes down to like what their responsibility is to their shareholders. Like their responsibility is to shareholders. And if the company is not profitable, if the company's not doing good this quarter, then, well, and so all those millions of dollars spent on lobbying and doing all this stuff is because it does have a return. It does have a return on investment. And like, like companies are companies. And like, if your sole motivator is to make more money, then that may or may not be in line with environmental like justice, or that may or may not be in line with like fixing climate change. So like it's like it's that's the issue. Like if you want to think about like climate change and like how the economics revolves around it, in my opinion, like it's got to come. It's got to be the government has to step in and be like, listen, we've got to set some freaking red lines here, and because like companies are going to be driven by nature and by default. Companies are going to be driven by profit. It's going to be driven by what makes them money. Sometimes it may align with the idea of like expanding renewables, but sometimes it doesn't, and it really doesn't. That's not their primary directive. It's like the same problem why companies shouldn't be in charge, or why the private sector shouldn't be in charge of healthcare, right? Because their primary directive isn't necessarily healthcare. Their primary directive is what they can deliver to shareholders, right? And like the difference between like having a universal healthcare system in other countries and all that stuff, and that's the difference between the universal side and ours, right? Like companies are incentivized by nature, by default, to cut corners, by default to deny you service because it saves them money, by default to understaff their hospitals and understaff the doctors and whatnot, right? Because it saves them money. By default, pharmaceutical company in the pharmaceutical industry is motivated to cut corners, to do whatever it is, sometimes do some shady skirting of regulations, to produce money. Like that's the thing. You like the reliance on some kind of magical, fantastical free market that's going to solve everything is I would say to the libertarian folks naive. Naive. If you think that like companies are going to be like ethical by default, not necessarily. Like their default motivation is to make profit because that's the system that we live in. That's just what it is.
Yeah. And I want to respond to Carpex because I mean it's fair. Yeah, not it doesn't matter what generation started them. Like I think it's okay. So it's not having to do with like the boomers or whatever. Like I was just talking off. It's more having to do with
the mindset. It's really the mindset. I get what you were trying to say.
It's the mindset. I think it's also the monopolization. I don't want monopolies in general, like what fossil fuel companies are, to be the next form of energy. You know, I don't want those great powers, and it might, you know, the only way exactly. And you know, they've done so much bad, they shouldn't be allowed to continue, frankly, in my opinion. But also, morality aside, I also don't think that we should have those big companies buying up clean energy and companies, even if they plan on using the clean energy and transitioning to clean energy or something like that. It's not going to, you know, it's not going to solve the problem that they're going to keep cutting corners, as you were talking about, and driving a profit and all that kind of stuff, you know. And it is also a mindset having to do with generations. I would like to think, even if younger people might not be more ethical by default, we do learn things from previous generations, hypothetically. And you know, we kind of learned that this whole climate issue is shit. And the big fossil fuel corporations, for the most part, are run by previous generations who have not had to come to grips with the issue quite the same way that our generation has.
And nor do they have to, because, well, let's be honest, they're not going to essentially see what
they're not going to see it. Their kids are probably going to be fine because they're in like the wealthy amount, so they will be fine.
Right.
So they've looked out for themselves. They've looked out for their kin. They're good. They're done.
Yep,
right.
And they peace out.
We're the ones that are screwed over by this.
Yeah, it's because the corners are not sharp enough. If you suppress a medicine that can cure a disease because you own a patent for another medicine, people will have to take the rest of their life. Monetary penalty should be the monetary penalty should be so large that the company should fail. Theoretically, like if you're that company, sorry, like when it comes to crossing the line where you literally are like thinking in the sense of like, well, I see that quarter 3 produced like X bajillion dollars because, well, X amount of people, I mean, you know, they died, I guess. They couldn't afford the product. I mean, oh well. Yeah, that's a no. Yeah. That's a no for me. Like that's
a hard no.
That's why I'm saying like the issue is the same. Like I kind of made the analogy like when you have things like healthcare that you can't have the primary directive be profit. You have to have the primary directive be healthcare. The same thing goes for like climate change. There are scenarios where sure. It is by coincidence that the profit motive aligns with a climate agenda. Right. But at the end of the day, it's the profit motive, right? Like if they have to yeet the climate side of it, they will if it makes them more money. So like that's why the same rules apply. If at this point in time, you can't really have a situation where you're allowing this to continue, in my opinion, for the same reason as to why you shouldn't have a for-profit system for healthcare. Like, yeah. You can balance the penalties and make us. But if you balance the possible penalties so large that the only way to make money is to do the right thing, yeah, or just take that responsibility away. Like, or just take that responsibility away. You shouldn't exist.
You know. It depends on what we're talking about, right? There are some industries or there's some sectors where just making things more penalized and stuff like that and letting the market for the most part do their thing it could work, you know. I think it's fair that we shouldn't be putting this as a one size fits all situation, right?
No,
There's
not
going to be
everything is a
some,
one size fits all. That's right.
right. So things like, for example, healthcare and environmental protection, I have not been convinced can be done through free market, because I don't know of any mechanisms that people are interested in employing that would get us to where we need to be fast enough through a free market system.
Correct. Yeah, the primary
But there are
problem.
other things. There are other sectors that might benefit more from it. So I don't know. You know,
My standard procedure is like
the penalty should be nationalization. France did that recently with the nuclear.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like if you if you're dealing with things like healthcare and like climate change and all that stuff, like like we will relieve that duty. Like the private business or the private sector has no business in that. Don't worry about it. That's why we should ideally, in an ideal world, have a functional government that would say, okay, like let's set the rules and boundaries.
Asking too much.
Yeah, I know. But like in an idealistic world, we would have a competent government that says, okay, hold on. We need to move resources in the direction of this way or that way. Obviously, healthcare would be one scenario. And the same goes for like protecting the environment, because at the end of the day, well, that's protecting healthcare. That's protecting a whole bunch of other things. If you don't have a functioning, if you don't have functioning ecosystems, you die. Like I don't know how else to put it.
Go to the basics that people don't want to have to think about, right?
Yeah.
Which health, environment, people don't want to have to think about that, and they shouldn't have to think about it. And, you know, but then on other things, absolutely encourage entrepreneurship through competition of means, blah, 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 blah. Once you have those initial needs met, though.
I think that like to set like a ground rule, or to set like ground baselines, right? The baselines to me should always be food, housing, education, and healthcare. If you have these what I call like 4 pillars, if you have these things set up, then we'll move on to the next thing. But like as a baseline, food, housing, education, and healthcare. These things should be like the housing includes your house being livable. In other words, like utilities, electricity, like all this other stuff.
And Wi-Fi should be included in utilities, because now it should just be a public good.
Yeah, like all of these things for housing. Yeah, that's kind of like the under implications of having a house. For like housing,
and transportation kind of goes there too.
Yeah, like food, housing, education, and healthcare, right? If you have these things, then we can move on to the next step, right? Like, because like I just have like such a skeptical Netflix included. Okay, listen, we're gonna go all the way out.
Netflix and chill
should be like a basic,
universal right.
True. Like exactly. It's kind of like implied in the contract. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Twitch Prime 2, F it. Like all of it is all included. Okay. What else do you want? Do you want YouTube Red? Sure. YouTube Red too. But like the whole argument is like you need to have a set like baseline, and then go from there, right? Because that's my point. And like just relying on something like especially with these kind of things, like for like privatization, is just like like the whole idea, like Carpe was saying, like the free market is a myth. Yes, the free market is a meme, because obviously there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a free market, because everything is finagled in some way, shape, or form by interests, and those interests finagle government, and the government finagles interests, and the private interests, and it's a thing. It's like a circle. It's like a feedback loop, to put it in that
clusterfuck.
Yes, it's a feedback loop that's like kind of perfectly done, so that they get to continue to stay in power, and they get to continue to enjoy all the good stuff. Like that's just how we work right now. But there could be a better way. I think that there could be a better way. There could be parallels that people can build simultaneously while working here in this system. And I think that it's not mutually exclusive to say that Why not push for things that maybe you yourself might not see, but why not push for things not because like it's what you're ideologically like you because you're like, oh, this is just what I'm supposed to support, but like why not like push for things because they're right, and like why not push for things because it's true. Like
I wonder why more people don't think like that, because you're talking like that. I think like that. Like, okay, it might not benefit me directly, but it will benefit my community, which therefore will indirectly benefit me.
yes,
Right. I That's like a community mindset. And I don't know why, but a lot of people are missing that mindset, and maybe it's probably a result of capitalism, considering all of us as competition rather than
right, we're all
community effort.
competition and we're all alienated, and there could never be a situation where we all start getting too together, and there can never be a situation where we all start talking too much,
Yeah.
or start to learn too much, which is why our education system is such garbage, which is all this, the underlying symptoms like do have a lot to do with the economics and with the environment that we've set up. All of this is like kind of all tying together because yes, I mean it's not just to say that everything that we are experiencing is just capitalism,
Right.
but the system that we are currently living under, the economic system that revolves around capitalism that we live under, does have a lot of implications and does have a lot of ramifications that echo out, that have ripple effects. And I think that it is something that we should not ignore. We shouldn't ignore.
So then it either goes back to either we try to fix all the problems that we see within the system or try to transition to a different system.
Both.
And,
yes, both.
A combination of both, right? It's not socialism, it's democratic socialism.
Like we should be doing what we can now, because that's just the right thing to do. We should be pushing for things that help people in the short term, pushing for more access to healthcare, pushing for government to do something, even if it's small W's around the place. And then simultaneously we need to understand that like mutual aid is good, understanding your community is good, building community networks is good,
equity pays back.
Yes. And like all of these things echo in the future, right? Because like I don't expect to like shoulder the whole thing, and like nor should one individual shoulder the whole thing. I think that like I'm a node here, I'm a node, and you're a node over here, and like Bleep Blop Ben is a node. She's much bigger, but all these nodes are slowly like interconnecting and making everything bigger as one, right? So little by little, like the concepts and the mindset that we ask people to consider, I don't see myself the same. Like I don't necessarily like am 100% just another like clone of
cog in the system.
Right. Like I'm not just another clone of whatever. But I do think that as we move, even though like there's plenty stuff that like the people that are in our communities and stuff like that argue about all the time. And how things should be deployed and what levels should be deployed and like where and how we get to it. But that's fine. But the point is, each one of us has a how should I say spot. Each one of us has a role to play. Each one of us we
each have our own things we're good at, things we're not good at, ways in life we're good at looking at. Everybody has their own benefit to society, and I think a combination between individualism, making sure your own needs are met, and you're content, again, putting on that oxygen mask before assisting others kind of thing, but also having that mentality of giving back, giving to your community, and that you are not God in the system. You are not so much more impactful than everybody else, and treating everybody else like how you would treat yourself.
Right.
It needs to be a combination of both. I don't absolutely hate the individualism focus on certain things, but on other things, I absolutely despise it because I'm like, what are we doing? We shouldn't just be focusing on ourselves during
Yes, and
about this.
that's true. Like the idea that like the idea I think like the idea the libertarian idea of like only viewing it from a individualist or individualism perspective, because
Every
like
man
that's
for himself.
yeah, like that's
Yeah.
that's disaster. Like the thing that comes to mind is like the famous like the quote that is like the famous quote, like to each according to his ability, to each according to his need, right? Everybody has an ability, everybody can contribute something, whether
Mhm.
you think so or not. Everybody has something to contribute, and that is something that I think is more important now than ever.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we're coerced to work for our survival. It's kind of like it kind of there's a disconnect, which is what I was saying earlier. That the reason why we feel, or some people think that like, oh, we're just inherently like greedy. We're just inherently like that's the way we are. Not really. We've developed a unnatural system, and now put ourselves in this
Mhm.
unnatural environment, and all of these forces that are pulling us
Right.
create these unnatural responses from us, which is to be greedy, which is being like, hey, I'm trying
Yeah.
to survive here, so
We
I'm gonna
weren't
do
hunters and gatherers on our own. We were
yeah
hunters and gatherers in a
as a
community.
right as a community. Like this idea that like, okay, great, I climbed up like 10 steps, now I need to kick it because the person behind me
Gonna catch
I
up.
yeah, like they're gonna catch up, and that I can't have that. I need to eat. I need a bigger house, and I need after that house, I need a mansion, and after that, well,
Yeah.
the world. Like why stop there?
Mhm.
Like that is an unnatural way of thinking. In my
Yeah.
opinion, like I could be 1,000% wrong, but it feels like that's not the way we should be moving, right? Like we should
Yeah.
be moving in a direction that takes everybody into consideration, that takes the person next to you into consideration, because like whether you agree with them or disagree with them or whatever, at the end of the day, like they're people, and like we all need to work together, and if not, then this is all effed. This is all
Yeah.
pretty effed, and out the window it goes.
Oh, we were doing so well.
Yeah, we were doing so great until like people decided that they were just gonna toss everything aside and go every man for themselves.
Yeah, but it's one of the benefits of these kind of communities is that it shows us more and more that people are good, and more people think like this, like community based, than people give us credit for. I think a lot people assume the selfishness. That's the stuff that makes headlines. Those are the billionaires. Those are the people that are like, our leaders. A lot of them had to selfishly do stuff to get there, which is why it's so easy to find gotchas on political figures.
Yeah, like,
but
do you think that like these people didn't just get there just by accident? Like, in order for you to be a billionaire, in order for you to be an oligarch or have this immense amount of wealth, is through very, in my opinion, ethically dubious methods.
You gotta step on some toes.
Yeah, quite a few of them, and that's how you do it. And the fact that we are encouraging it by this unnatural like area that we've created for ourselves, and say like, hey, this is just how it is. It's like, well,
Yeah.
does it always have to be this way? Let's have a 5-second think about this. And does it always have to be this
5
way?
seconds, all we need. Just
Yeah,
5
like
seconds.
just stop and think about what is going on here, and then try to rationalize it, and then tell me this is good.
Yeah.
But that's just me. Like I don't particularly say like, oh, this is like 100% like I'm 1,000% right, but like I think that at the very least we should move in the direction of questioning where we're at here, because like something's not working here, and I want people to
and we
question
all feel
that.
it.
Yeah, we all know
feel that it's not working.
Yeah,
but
we all understand that at some fundamental level, like we're not. This isn't working. So like, can we we need to bring that to the surface. We need to bring that to the surface and to the conscious of people, and not the subconscious, because like I think deep down, like I said, a lot of people are anxious, a lot of people are depressed, a lot of people are feel alienated, and like there's a sense of like, yeah, I think I know this isn't working, but like we need to bring that to the conscious of people and say like, hey, let's now that we understand, let's do something. Let's do something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like each one of our nodes. That's what our jobs are. Like
that's what we're doing. We're just trying to, poke people a little bit, be like, hey, you should look over here. There's a little something over here that needs a little bit of attention.
Yeah, like, hey, have you considered like the system that you're? It's a little weird that all you do is wake up, you work, you go to sleep, you wake up, you work, you go to sleep, you wake up, you go to, and like for a lot of people, for tens and tens of millions of people, just speaking on the country, here, need to work 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs, or they do a main job and then a bunch of side gigs that are horrible.
And then they're told, you're living the American dream. You're doing great. This is exactly how the
hustle culture, right? Like
it's worked this way as long as you've been alive. So therefore, this must be the only method.
This is a logical fallacy. Because it is, and therefore it just always has to be. And like, but if you can get people to be like, it's kind of weird, isn't it? That like you can work as hard as you want, and some of the hardest working people are some of the people that are like just kind of stepped on constantly. Money. Yeah. They're stepped on constantly, and people just kind of accept that that's just the way it is. Like they know fundamentally that something's not right, but I think that like the more we talk about it and the more we bring it to the forefront, although it's kind of doing it itself, it's doing our work for us, but we need to like nudge people and make them see or question, be like, because once you start thinking about it, it's starts to get harder and harder to justify what we're doing.
But it's hard because people are tired. They're tired from working their 2 and 3 jobs. They're tired of taking care of their kids with no access to child care or health care. So at the same time, we've been made submissive with this current system because
I agree.
We don't have the time to think about it, and we are privileged for being able to have the time to think about it. And it sucks that that's the way it is. And I wish that small business owners and like democratic socialists would join together against the monopolies and the corporations, because I feel like a lot of us would agree that they're the problem there.
I think they're a piece of the problem.
They're a piece of the problem. They're not the full problem. But I feel like, when people are pro-government or something like that, other people will assume that either they A, love the government as is, which is not true, or B, hate all business and want people to be living in this communistic dystopia that they come up with of everybody being the exact same and doing the exact same and having no entrepreneurship and
and they think that just because like you believe a certain thing that it's they ascribe certain other things. And like I think this is also a good point here. We have to also contend with people who call us just like explorationists for pointing out flaws in the system or that electoral systems support our continued exploitation. Like if you point that out and you like be like, hey, this is kind of, like we still got to do what we got to do, like, with the confines of what we're living in here. But like, we also need to understand that like this can't be the end all be all, right? Like this can't continue.
We have to figure out why the constraints exist.
Right.
Who put them there?
Yes, who put
whether
them
or
there?
not they're necessary.
Correct. If people get locked into a mortgage, they're stuck in one location, therefore cannot move where the jobs are, and as the jobs change from city to city. I mean, sure, but there's fundamentally other issues there. Sure, that happens.
Systemic change. Systemic issues that are beyond their control.
Yes. But I think that point right there is pretty good. Like just pointing out like problems. All of a sudden, like you get called all kinds of different things. And like pointing out the issues or like making people think. Like it's just wild to me that this is 2022 and like people are still in the same stuck in this like loop. They're stuck in this loop that like they can't imagine, or if they do, it's just like abstract to them. Like maybe there is a better way. And so we should keep pushing to make people understand, to raise or elevate consciousness that supports or at least gets people motivated, or at least gets people to kind of like for 5 seconds just to like snap and be like, oh, huh, maybe this isn't this. We need to figure this out, because this isn't. I don't know. Like just speaking from the perspective of a normie, if I'm a normie. And like I just like sit there and be like, well, you know what? I don't know, but this isn't working.
Mhm.
We need to get people to that point, or like the normies to that point, so that like at that point we can be like, well, here's our solution.
Yeah. Right. Well,
Like
you just start with, okay, you're uncomfortable. You
why?
noticed you're uncomfortable. Okay, why are you uncomfortable? Okay. All right. So, what do you think the solution is? And this is something that I propose could be
Right.
the solution. Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
Socratic method. Just like ask questions,
Exactly.
not ask questions like in the sense of like the meme, like just asking questions meme, but ask questions in the sense of like make them think, even though they may not end up understanding what you're saying right now.
Mm-hmm.
Leave that in their head, in the back of their head. Be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I should. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It is kind of weird, isn't it? It is kind of
Yeah.
weird how, oh shoot, back into my second job, that's kind
Right.
of
Right.
weird. Yeah. And so that's how it is. In my opinion, I think that's probably the play that we have,
Mhm.
among other things. Like if you have the ability to do something good right now, if you have the ability to lobby or push government to do something right now, then you should do it. If
Yeah.
you have the ability, like the Kansas amendment that essentially kept the idea of bodily autonomy, that does have a real effect on
Mhm.
people. So if you have that ability, you should do it. If
Yeah.
you have that tool, do it. Use it.
Absolutely.
Because someone else will.
Yeah.
Someone else will.
Exactly.
Yeah. It is past 8:30, so I gotta get going.
Yeah, I'm
I
so.
gotta get food.
Does your chat usually end at like 5, or does it end at like 5:30? Or it's 5:30 over here right now.
Yeah, usually it's like a 2.5 hour stream, but you know what? This was great. Go
Yeah.
feed your cat, True Chai. Hey, how's it going, by the way? Yes, I should go feed my cat. You're right.
You have a cat too?
Yeah.
You've been holding out on me.
Oh shoot, my bad. You follow the stream, right?
I do follow the stream.
Now-
I guess I haven't seen the cat on there.
Yeah, go actually go on your followers emotes.
Okay.
Because on Twitch you get like 5 free emotes, and one of
Yeah.
them is the cat. Yeah, Kitty, Paquita the cat.
Oh my gosh. And that's actually a picture of your cat?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Wait. Your
Yes.
cat's so cute.
Bustin'. Yes, that's her. And she'll come on stream for Catterdays.
Oh, okay. I haven't been on the Catterday one.
Yeah, Catterdays are usually on the weekend. Sundays, although we've been slacking, but Sundays are usually the day. And we always, no matter what, we always end up with the cat somehow. If it's not my cat, it's the co-host's cat or cats, because she has multiple.
Oh my gosh.
But there's always a cat on stream on the Catterdays. But yeah, that's Paquita the cat. Her little
Catita? That's the
Paquita,
name,
like little cow, like Paquita.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's just her face, but her
Yeah.
body is like the perfect like a pattern. She looks like she's like perfectly spotted to look exactly like a cow.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So we just called her that.
Well, okay, that also is why we're friends. We're cat people.
Yeah. Exactly. We have the same exact yes, exactly. And if you type her name, Paquita, her little face pops up too on the chat, the
Really?
Twitch chat. Yeah, because I've got like a thing called Better TV emotes that you can add like emotes that you type out the name of the emote and it'll show it in that particular
oh,
chat.
wow. I still have so much to learn.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah.
So I typed in.
Yep,
That
there it
doesn't
is.
work. Wait, where?
I see it.
You see it? I don't see it. Where is
Yeah,
it?
you have to look at it and because you need the what is it called? The extension.
Oh.
Yeah, if you have the extension, you'll see it because I can see it when you type it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't keep track of all of it. There's so much to learn.
Oh,
Twitch
no
is a
worries.
whole world.
No worries, little by little.
That's so funny. That's so cute, though. I need to make one for Rube. 'cause
Yep.
He's my co-host. My little baby co-host. Oh, all right. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. You
Heck
should
yeah.
go feed your cat.
I should because
I gotta
chat's
feed
gonna
mine. Well,
get me for that
yeah.
one.
Yeah, I usually feed mine around like 7, so he's got another like hour and a half. But it was lovely talking with you.
Absolutely.
We should do this more often.
Yes.
We should do it on my chat next.
Yes.
Yeah. if I figure out how to do Zoom on chat, because I really don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, it's okay. You can we have Discord too. So whichever
That's
one's easier.
oh, okay. I also don't know much about Discord either. Oh, I'm a noob.
You've got a quite a what is it, curriculum to go through.
Curriculum. I do.
Yeah.
It's a whole school. It's a whole school
Yeah.
of information. My goodness. But yeah. Okay, cool. Well, it was great talking with you.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to watch my newest video on the Inflation Reduction Act, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Before we sign off, just where do we find you?
Oh yes. So I can be found on YouTube and on podcast forum and on Twitch stream, and you can also follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm Beckisphere on the YouTube channel. I'm Beckisphere Climate Corner, and then on Instagram I'm TheBeckisphere, and then everything else I'm just Beckisphere.
Yeah.
Beckisphere apparently already exists on Instagram, so
Gotcha.
we work with what we get. And then the podcast is called The Climate Recap, and Carlos shows it often on his channel. So you can either watch it through his Twitch stream or you can watch it on.
Go watch it directly. Yeah, go throw the views over there.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah, go throw the views over there. My job is to get more eyeballs and get people to sub. All right, do the thing.
Yes. And I appreciate that. And I have gotten more subscribers from you, so I greatly appreciate that.
Sweet.
Yeah. So you can either find that there's a YouTube channel for the Climate Recap, and it's also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify too, if you would prefer just listen to it, because it's just the audio.
Cool. And TLDR of what you do. Just a brief TLDR.
Yes. So I am a climate communicator. I talk about the climate news and solutions going on. I'm from California, so it's US based, but I do also talk about a lot of international news too. And yeah, just talking about climate change news and solutions, talking about the climate crisis, climate destruction, climate chaos, all the fun terms.
Yeah.
And try to make it not super doomeristic and talk about the good stuff too. But yeah, get a realistic picture as well. Yeah. So that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thank you so much for hanging out. We'll definitely do this again, and I'll definitely go on your channel as well.
Absolutely. It was great seeing you, and have a great rest of your evening.
You too. Thank you. Appreciate it. There we go. Cool. Yeah, I think definitely capitalism is a factor. I agree. Capitalism is a factor. Greed, the profit motive, incentivizing the destruction of the environment, fossil fuel companies being driven by nothing more than profit, throwing aside whatever is in their way, including the environment, the air, the water. They don't care. As long as it makes them profit. I agree. I think it is a huge factor as to what we're seeing. Folks, I gotta get going. I'm gonna do a couple of shoutouts again. If you guys haven't already, please go show some support to these wonderful folks. I think I got everybody. I hope I got everybody. Did you see what the oil was wearing though? Oh no, stop it. So please go follow these wonderful folks. They do fantastic work. Please go follow TheBeckisphere. She does fantastic work. When it comes to the climate crisis, please go show some support to their podcast. Also, really quickly, if shoot, hold on. If Bleeplop Ben is still here, first and foremost, I want to thank Bleeplop Ben for bringing her wonderful community here. I also want to thank Bleeplop Ben for reaching out and actually taking the time to reach out to me and make sure that personally, you know, to make sure we're doing okay. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, and that really means a lot. That people like you reach out, and people like you, like all of us, kind of have this cool camaraderie or whatnot, if you want to call it that. What I'm saying is thank you for being an awesome person, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate what you do as well. Yes, they do have some knowledge. Absolutely, that's their thing, and that's their jam. Their jam is to be a climate communicator and do climate news media. That's what they do. That's what she does. So yeah, that's their jam. So yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Bleep Blop Ben, thank you. Thank you. Just really quickly, Chantal for the follow. Voluntacio for the follow. Appreciate that. Thank you guys, as always. Folks, if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. Don't forget to join on the YouTubes. And hit the subscribe button. It really does help us out. And also, spread the word far and wide that this is a place to be for news and politics, Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love y'all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. I see you, YouTube. I see you. All right, folks, get ready. We are heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See ya.